So you can take it home with you. Thank you. Yes.
I hope I brought the right stuff for tonight. I brought what, actually, I thought it was last week's.
See anybody at this point.
I did receive important news just now from one of my granddaughters that she had just lost her second tooth. So she wanted to show me on FaceTime. I think that they will miss it.
What happened to Carrie? She's in the set?
Yeah.
No. If I could ask you to find seats, we're about to start the meeting, please. This is a regular meeting of the Princeton Planning Board. It's Thursday, October 3rd, 2019, and the opening statement is as follows. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place of this meeting has been given by prominently posting the 2019 agenda resolution of the regularly scheduled meetings of the Princeton Planning Board. Such notice has been placed on the official bulletin board at the Princeton Municipal Complex and is to be maintained throughout the year by transmitting a copy of such schedule to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, Times, Trentonian, and Comcast Media. A copy has been filed with the Clerk of Princeton on the 7th day of December 2018. Legal notice on the adoption of said resolution appeared in the December 14, 2018 edition of the Princeton Packet. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Mr. Oakman?
Here.
Mr. Quinn?
Here.
Mr. Stankiewicz?
Here.
Mr. Texarney?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. McGowan?
Here.
Mrs. Genny?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. There are a few announcements. On October 10th, there will be a special meeting of the Planning Board. This is a continuation of the Landwind Development application, and we'll also be hearing David Baril, and that's a minor subdivision. On October 17th, there will be a regular meeting of the Princeton Planning Board. This is to do the university's new residential colleges. On October 24th, there will be a planning board meeting to look at the amended site plan for the Princeton Charter School, and this will be a special meeting of the planning board. The master plan subcommittee discussion regarding the green building sustainability element will be scheduled sometime in November. The date is yet to be determined. Does anyone else have any announcements? Anyone? Yes.
Madam Chair, I'd ask for, before the charter hearing, that we get advice from council as to who's able to be up here for that. I know that Mr. Cohen and I had to recuse the last time, and I think with other people joining the board since the last time charter appeared before the planning board, that there might be an issue. So,
All right, I'll put that down for discussion with Jerry. Anything else, anyone? All right, we have two hearings tonight. The first one is Kevin E. McCarthy. This is a minor site plan with variances. It's 6-8 Charlton Street, Block 4702, Lot 18. And I'm going to ask Mr. Laplace if he will walk us through his report and tell us what this application involves.
Yeah, before we get started, Carrie, a proof of publication and service in order.
Yes.
The board therefore has jurisdiction. Michael, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. What you have before you, the first item on our agenda is a minor site plan with variances application for Kevin McCarthy. The site is located at 6-8 Charlton Street, which is about a block south of Nassau Street, and just north of the Princeton University campus. It's in an area of mixed uses, residential, some office. It's in an RO residential office zone, so it is a permitted use. But it's an interesting situation where there's two buildings on the site. There's the principal building is an office building in a converted residential structure in the front, which is about 5,731 square feet. And then behind it is a 2.5 story accessory garage. The proposal is to actually replace the accessory garage in the rear of the site and put that garage use back on the first level, but then add a second level accessory apartment. The building would approximately be the same size and dimensions, but it would have a little bit of an addition with an added, over here is what's proposed, a northerly side staircase to have access to the second floor apartment. There's lots of considerations in terms of the site plan. There's bulk variances that are being requested for parking. There's, for instance, 11 parking spaces are required for the new residential and garage use, as well as the office use in the front of the site. And there's 6 spaces that are proposed. We are also curious about how circulation will work on this site. We want to hear from the applicant about that, how circulation and access to each of the parking spaces. There's also setback and bulk variances related to the new structure, the new accessory structure, and that it's right at the property line. The existing building actually encroaches on the easterly and southerly adjoining properties, and staff has raised the consideration that perhaps the new building should be pulled back onto the subject property and eliminate those encroachments. And there's no setback right now. We think there should be maybe a few feet setback so that the exterior of the new accessory building can be maintained and so someone can have access to it to paint it and make repairs as needed and to maintain the building. The property is not located in a designated historic district, although I've learned that years ago when the borough was before consolidation, the borough of Princeton had considered it as a possible historic district, this neighborhood, but that was not actually formalized. So it's near some historic areas and of course the Nassau Street corridor, but it's not within a historic district. So I think those are the major considerations and issues. You've got the existing 2 buildings, pretty much the same configuration which is being proposed, slightly larger accessory building, which is now a single-use garage, and the addition, the new building that'll replace it will have a second-floor living unit, and then the parking arrangement, which is worthy of some discussion about how that will function.
And Michael, you've been referring to a plan that's on a presentation board. Let's mark that as A1, and if you could describe it for the board and the public.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Michael?
Yeah, if you could just briefly describe what A1 is.
Oh, A1 is the submitted site plan by Van Cleef Engineering Associates. Let's see what the date is here. February 12th, 2019. And it's showing the existing condition and the proposed configuration of the 2 buildings on the site.
David, did you have a question?
Well, it's more a question, I think, for Derek. Are you going to be making a separate
Well-
presentation, or?
I need to be sworn in.
We would need to swear in.
Do you
Derek.
swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
Thank you.
So, in reviewing the bulk table that's in the zoning report, there's the implication that there's a reduction in the size of the parking stalls in the garage because the minimum parking stall size is listed as 9 by 18 under, oh, I'm sorry, that's the standard required. Okay, so those are 7 foot 3.5 inch parking spaces in terms of width, and that's existing and proposed, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Did you have anything that you wanted to add, Jack, Derek?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
And actually, there's no engineering issues with this application.
Derek, did you want to add something to your?
No, if you have any other questions, I think Michael described it pretty accurately, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Okay.
Madam Chair, just a quick question for Derek. I'm sorry if I missed this, but it says, he mentioned that there's a requirement of 11 parking spaces and 6 are provided, so that's a variance request. What would the requirement have been prior to having the, how does the requirement change with the new addition of the new apartment?
The new unit requires, I think, 1 space, so that's the increase would be from that 1 space for the
The
apartment.
increase in the requirement is just 1 space?
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, anyone else? If not, then I think we're ready to hear from the applicant.
Yes, Richard Schatzman, attorney. I just want to, for the record, state that when I made the service, Mr. Mueller, I also served within 200 feet of the next-door neighbor because there's an easement. In that case, my Judge Keefe says that would be part of the application, so I made a 200-foot service of the neighbors within 200 feet of Mr. Goldfar's property.
All right, thank you.
Sir, I think you need to put your microphone on. Is the microphone on?
Also, in Mr. LaPaz's presentation, I think he failed to mention that the encroachments will be eliminated. We're going to eliminate the encroachments on the southern and easterly side. There'll be no setbacks, he's right on that, but the encroachments will be gone. And tonight we have 3 witnesses. One, Mr. Ford, who's the design engineer, Mr. Fries, who's the architect, Mr. McCarthy will make a brief statement, and his daughter, who plans to live there, also will make a brief statement as well. So if you will have Mr. Ford sworn in, Mr. Mueller, please.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that testimony about to give will be the truth? Please state your full name and spell your last name. I think I can guess how you spell your last name, but put it on the record.
Yes. Michael Ford, last name's F-O-R-D.
Okay, Mr. Ford, you want to give us the benefit of your professional background?
Yes. Licensed professional engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey for more than 20 years, appeared before numerous boards throughout the state of New Jersey, and graduated of Rutgers University in 1985.
We accept your qualifications.
And you prepared these plans, or the plans were prepared under your direction?
Yes.
And you're familiar with the zoning and site plan ordinances of Princeton, are you not?
Yes.
And you obviously visited the site.
Yes.
You want to give an overview of the proposal for tonight's application?
Okay. Yes. The board has already heard from their professionals. I'll be brief. The rendering A1 is the single sheet that we provided as part of this application, a minor site plan. As Mr. West stated, I don't believe we really have any engineering issues from a drainage stormwater management standpoint. The impervious coverage remains essentially unchanged by this application. The front structure and access driveway and the parking area remain unchanged. And but for the raising and reconstructing the existing detached garage, the other elements of the site remain unchanged. The utilities for the new efficiency apartment would be provided via underground connection through and to the existing structure in the front. And then with regards to the parking, there's an existing driveway, a single lane access driveway to a stone parking area that's behind the front structure that would accommodate 6 parking spaces. We're not proposing any change to that. The existing office building and existing uses, as was stated by your planner, require 10 parking spaces, and with the addition of the efficiency apartment building or apartment unit, the increase in the site's required parking is 10 spaces. And just as a matter of factual comment, the 6 spaces that we're saying are provided today don't include the 2 within the garage. So essentially, on site, there's a adequate parking for 8 spaces, albeit tight spaces. We're in a urban residential area, and the gravel parking at the back, you'll see on the layout on the site plan, would require actually some of the office parking spaces to be, I'll call them stacked parking spaces, or one car would have to be moved to allow another employee out if everybody left at the same time. But that's the way it functions today.
And it's your understanding that's the way it always functioned?
Since it's been in office use, yes, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Muller, I'm going to make some statements because I practiced law there for about 30 years, so I have exact knowledge. You know, you want to swear me in?
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
So sworn or affirmed?
Yeah, Richard Schatzman. Those days it was McCarthy, Bassick, and Hicks, and then it became K.O. McCarthy, Bassick, and Hicks, et cetera, and finally, since I got old and gray hair, became McCarthy and Schatzman. And I practiced law there for 30 years, and it always was tight, but it was always, we could always go up and down the driveway, had to be careful, and we had stacked parking, and it worked pretty well. Of course, in the early days, there was no meters on Charlton Street, there was no meters on William Street, and there was parking down towards Princeton Polychrome Press, so you had a lot of parking there on Off Street. But as far as the within the area of the parking lot, we never had a problem. That's based upon my use of the property since 1967 to about 1985, 1986, or thereabouts. And you have anything more to add, Mr. Ford?
Just one other comment with regards to the staff reviews. There was a suggestion that the applicant consider providing on site the addition of a bike rack. And as was noted as part of the presentation, in order to accommodate the second floor residential unit, there's an exterior stairway that's being proposed on the detached garage, and the architect has provided actually that would be a really optimal spot for a bike rack right under that stairway that goes to the second floor. So the applicant could provide the bike rack as has been suggested by the staff. And that would also be a location where the air conditioner condenser units could be accommodated, and that's right adjacent to our parking area, so it's not next to any of our neighbors.
Is that it?
Yes.
Any questions of Mr. Ford?
Go ahead.
Just a quick question. Has there been any consideration or thought to installing or at least teeing up for the installation of an EV charger?
There hasn't been any discussion with the applicant about that for the parked cars. The garage itself, which has accommodate 2 cars, would have electric to it, so perhaps, the architect can speak to the, the ability to charge an electric car right there without even the standalone unit next to the parking spaces. So
So
that could be
with the
accommodated.
regular, with the kind of
Like a regular outlet.
charger that comes in your trunk that takes 13 hours as opposed to 2 hours or 2.5.
Right.
Well, something to think about. We don't
Okay.
require it yet, but we're moving in that direction, I think it's safe to say. And, I mean, as a board and as a community.
Yeah, when the, Ms. Wilson, when the applicant speaks, he can answer that
There you go.
question, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Freeze, please.
I'm sorry, could I just
Yes, go ahead.
ask one question about the way the parking spaces in the garage are used? I understand you're not counting them towards the requirement, but are they used as parking spaces currently? Have they been over the years that you
Yeah.
were in the building?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So is there a particular reason why you're not counting them? Did you feel like it was easier to get a variance for the number of spaces than for the size of those spaces, or
What's the question?
why you're not counting the garage spaces as part of the provided parking?
Maybe the architect can answer that. But there are garage.
We should be
spaces.
counting them. You're correct.
See,
We have 2
and
spaces.
from a staff's point of view, I mean, they've had this site for 100 years, they know how it works, but from an ordinance and parking standard point of view, these parking spaces that are at the rear part of the lot, I guess you would call them 4, 5, and 6, work if you control the lot, but just from an ordinance point of view, those are blocked-in stacked parking spaces. They would need a variance for stacked parking, so we use basically 4 spots in the parking lot and then 2 in the garage as the 6 for the 11 required, just because you can't really get in and out of those spots the way the ordinance intends to. So that's
Okay.
the reason we took that approach.
Okay.
But you can get in and out of them. I've done that for 25 years. Trust me on that, Derek. Mr. Freese, want to be sworn in?
Yeah,
please?
if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Glenn Freeze, F-R-I-E-S.
Okay, Mr. Freese, you want to give us your professional background, please?
I'm a registered architect in the state of New Jersey. I've been here for over 30 years, practicing, doing mostly residential work in the area, and I feel qualified to be working on this project.
Okay, and obviously you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey, correct?
State of New Jersey, yes.
And you, plans were prepared by you or under your direction?
Yes,
And you're familiar somewhat with the site plan and zoning ordinance of Princeton?
yes, we looked into all of that,
And you visited the site, obviously?
yes.
Okay, do you want to give us an overview of the architectural functions of this proposal?
Sure. This project is actually a win-win for everybody here. We started the project a couple of years ago. Kevin and I went to look at the project to see if we could just repair the garage that was there, because it's in pretty bad disrepair. At that time, we realized that we did have a couple of side yard setbacks. In fact, on the south side, it encroaches on the neighboring property by 6 inches, and on the back by 3 inches. Also, the roof overhangs extend over those properties by 1 foot and 1 inch. So we did have those problems. We got into looking at the building to see if we could salvage it, and there's some beautiful old timbers in there and stuff, but the foundation is no good, and what we came to the conclusion is it would be better off to rebuild the building in a likeness of the old building. And in so doing, on the existing building, there is an existing second floor. It's a hayloft, but because of the roof lines, it wasn't enough room to stand up in. So we created dormers on the front and the back so that you could stand up on the second floor. But if you look at the
Mr. Freeze, now you're pointing to something. Could you
Yeah, that-
advise the board and the public what that is, and let's mark that. That should actually be Exhibit A1, and Michael, our exhibit should be
Testing,
PB1.
yep.
Our exhibit should be PB1,
The-
rather than A1.
The existing building is a two-story building with a little,
You want to mark it, though, let's
let's mark
identify
this A2.
A2, and mark, describe for the record what it is.
We're actually going to remark the planning board exhibit as PB1, so this should be A1.
A1 is a photograph of existing conditions on the right, or on left, and proposed conditions on the right. You can see that it's a very similar roof line, except for we did add a clear-story dormer on the front, and there's a similar dormer on the back that gives us headroom and windows for daylight on the second floor. We changed the garage doors and put windows in the garage doors so that we get more light in the building, and it became structurally sound. In building the building, we did correct the side yard setbacks on the south. We pulled it over 6 inches inside the property line, and on the back it's 6 inches inside the property line. On the south side and the east side, we trimmed the eaves back to that same dimension so that there are no setbacks anywhere around the property. We did look at the possibility of moving it 2 feet and in and out, and it just encroached so much on the parking that it made more sense to leave it at the property line with the conditions that we did have. We did, the reason I think it's a win-win for everybody is we spoke at length with the lady who lives in Firestone Court. She lives right here, and she has a garden courtyard that is actually kitty corner right on the same property line to this property. We visited with her and showed her what we wanted to do, and she said, well, I would rather look at that than look at a building that is falling down, and I would rather look at that than a parking lot. So she was in full favor of everything that we were doing. She's the most affected person on this whole area, and she's in full support of this project.
And isn't it a fact, Mr. Freeze, that you rearranged the windows to suit her taste on that?
That's a good point. On the east side and this side that looked down over into her garden, that was her only request. We made those windows frosted glass so that you couldn't see into her garden, and she maintained her privacy. But she was really thrilled with the project. The new project, in terms of getting to the building to repair it and stuff, all the siding and stuff is a Borel product that needs very little maintenance. It's all brand new. This thing will last forever and need very little maintenance. Let's see.
What product?
Borel, B-O-R-A-L. It's a fly ash product that a lot of people are using now to replace cedar siding and wood siding because it looks like wood, paints like wood, lasts forever, and doesn't rot like cedar does these days. It's an existing, right now all the siding is asbestos siding, so that's all going away. We're putting up the Borel. The shingles now are asphalt shingles. We're putting on a copper roof. So it's going to be an enriched building. And we were lucky to have Kevin to do this. His father put the building on there about 50 years ago. And we're going to continue to keep it there. And the added benefit of a residential unit above it just makes it more lively. We are adding a bike rack underneath this staircase, and also that's where the little Mitsubishi air conditioning condenser would go. Are there any questions?
I just wanted to make a comment to clarify the record. You made reference to setbacks on the east and south side that you're correcting or eliminating. You meant encroachments. I think the attorney had spoken about encroachments.
Correct. It's an encroachment on the other property that we're correcting.
Okay.
So that we are all totally within our property.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Kevin? Want to swear?
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm, please state your full name and spell your last name.
Kevin McCarthy, M-C-C-A-R-T-H-Y.
You want to just identify for the record who you are?
I'm the owner of the property. I'm proud to be now the fourth generation of my family to own 6 and 8 Charlton Street. My father was literally born in the building. I lived there for a short time when I was an infant. I later practiced law there. My cousin lives next door, and he parks his car in the garage. My daughter, Caroline, who's here tonight, would like to occupy the efficiency apartment that is proposed on the second floor of the garage here. I'm told the garage was a carriage house or a small barn of some sort before the main building was moved to Charlton Street from Nassau Street. So actually the garage is older in that location than the main building. When I consider the possibility of living quarters on the second floor, I consulted with Elric Endersby and the New Jersey Barn Company to see if the structure could be preserved and converted, but as Glenn Freese described, the conclusion was it was not possible due to the nature of the structure and its age and its condition. Especially since I've taken over management of the building in the last couple of years, I've become familiar with the importance of good cooperative relations with others in the neighborhood. Glenn Freese already described how we met with Professor Whitkin, who lives in Firestone Court behind the garage. The most important place for the neighborliness, though, is in the driveway, which is shared by easement with 10 and 12 Charlton Street next door. Whenever anybody from 6 and 8 Charlton Street enters the driveway, they're using part of our neighbor's property. When our neighbors use their parking spaces, they may do K-turns that include using part of the parking lot at 6 and 8. It takes cooperation by everyone to make it work. The parking situation is tight, as has been described. A few years ago, a vehicle trying to turn around in the lot hit the north side of the garage that required repairs to the siding. More recently, another vehicle hit a low cinder block wall that's at the entrance to the parking area, and repairs to that wall were just done last week. My point is that the suggestion that the footprint of the new structure be moved further to allow additional clearance, I believe will make it difficult for the tenants and for the neighbors to navigate the driveway and the parking lot. I'd like to thank the board for your consideration of this. I hope that in a year or two I'll be able to visit my daughter in the apartment. Are there any questions?
Anyone?
Thank you very much.
We have a restatement from hopefully the occupant.
Go ahead.
Quick question, are you reusing any of the timbers?
Yes, yeah, we want to,
Yes, we are.
yes.
What was it?
Yes, we're reusing those on the interiors, so it's going to look like it was there originally. Yes, thank you. I meant to say.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
So sworn or affirm, please state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Caroline McCarthy. That's M-C-C-A-R-T-H-Y.
And just for the record, state what your position is with respect to this
Can you speak into the mic,
proposal.
please, Mr. Chesney?
I'm sorry. Would you please state for the record what your position is with respect to the applicant?
I am Kevin's daughter.
And you hopefully will occupy this?
That's correct.
And you live in New York now, and you want to now live in Princeton?
Part-time to start. I work in Manhattan, and I currently maintain a residence in Brooklyn. But I maintain very close ties to Princeton. I'm also involved in one of the historic preservation initiatives in town, and I want to start spending more time here to see family and to work on that project.
And you're going to use this as your residence in Princeton?
Correct.
Any further comments you want to make?
Well, I was going to say that I would be very excited to be part of the fourth generation to live at 6 to 8 Charlton Street, but apparently my math is wrong and I would be the fifth. So that would be extremely thrilling. And also I'm very excited to hear that there would be a bike rack involved, because while staying there, even though I do have a car to get from New York to Princeton, my primary method of transportation while in Princeton would be on bicycle.
Any questions?
Anyone?
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. So that's our application. I must say that the variances we're looking for, although many, are existing conditions. We're basically rehabilitating a falling down garage, and believe me, it's falling down. It was falling down 50 years ago when I started, and it's even worse now. And I would say legally that it promotes a nice visual environment now, and it provides for a appropriate place for residents. It's close to town. We used to walk down Nassau Street when we were on 6A Charlton Street, and it was a lot of fun walking down Nassau Street and meeting the few lawyers then in Princeton as compared to now. And it provides appropriate residence in an appropriate location. And hopefully we can get approval so that Ms. McCarthy can live there as she stated. And that's our case.
Thank you. Let me just open the meeting now for public comment and see if anyone would like to comment on this. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward, give comment?
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
David Goldfarb, Goldfarb. I live at 12 Charlton Street, and as been mentioned, I share the driveway and have access to my parking space via that driveway. The status quo works very well. The status quo as the garage now stands works well. I'm in favor of the proposal to add an apartment, both from a general policy point of view as a former Borough Council member, to encourage this kind of infill development, to add a residential unit in a space where people don't really need a car for most of ordinary day-to-day uses. I am opposed to the staff's recommendation that the property be moved other than to eliminate the encroachment. Specifically, my parking space would be impacted by a move away from the rear property line. It would make access more difficult, which could then endanger the relationship that now exists among the three property owners that leads to the availability of the shared driveway. So tampering with the status quo could eliminate the effective use of the property, and by displacing all of the parking, it would make the office space much less valuable, and of course it would create a problem for me as well. So my suggestion to the architect, if the planning board is willing to comply, would be to move the property only as far as necessary to eliminate the encroachment. Even 6 inches, if 6 inches is more than necessary to eliminate the encroachment, 6 inches is too much. Just move it enough to eliminate the encroachment. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Mary Beth Schneller, Schneller. I agree with David's comments. I am the tenant in the 6 to 8 office building space. I'm the director of finance for the American School of Classical Studies at Athens. We have been the main tenant, sole tenant of the building since 1996. We're not a tenant of the garage space, but we're aware of the proposal, as I've discussed with Kevin over the past year and a half. Our employees park behind the building, which is a daily challenge as it is, but we make it work. It is a tight maneuvering the cars in the lot and with the narrow driveway. If the garage came out anymore, it would be almost impossible to come in and out with a disturbance, because you kind of have to hit a certain spot just to get out as it is. As a user of the parking lot, we request that the space does not get any tighter than needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, seeing and hearing none, let me close the public portion. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, David.
I guess I'd like to hear from the applicant, since the clear preference is not to move the building enough to give access for maintenance to the north and east, or south and east side. How you propose to maintain it and why you're choosing a paint finish material, even though the Boreal is very durable. Paint will need to be repainted at some point in the future. Are there other materials you could use that would be even lower maintenance? I'm curious about what your thinking is in terms of those issues that were the subject of staff's recommendation to move the building.
I'm going to ask you to use a microphone if you're going to speak.
On the south side, at the property line, this is all open, and this is where David Goldfarb parks his car. We would always be able to get permission or access to this side. This is a parking lot here, and this is all accessible with a consideration from the person that owns that property. So we felt that staying there, correcting the encroachment was the best thing to do based on the encumbrances that it would put on the parking lot by moving it. The maintenance is the painted Boreal comes pre-painted. It may need painting once every 15 or 20 years. I would call it pretty maintenance-free.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, go ahead.
I think also for you, sir, can you confirm that there is availability of electric inside the garage should someone choose to charge their
Yes,
car overnight?
we could do that. That's a good point. We're pulling in new electrical service and water and gas from the basement of the main building. We will bring in enough to have enough amperage for a car charger, and it could be located also underneath the stairs, where the bike rack is, and they could just, so if there was electric charging, that it is a possibility, and we'll make sure of that.
Could I, before you disappear, let me just ask a question. The neighbor who has a garden right next to this, Is she aware that there will be a little less light on her garden when this new structure is done?
There will be no limitation on the light from what she has now.
It won't be higher?
This roof line is the same as this roof line, and it's the same shadow and sun that she gets. Plus, her garden is on the south side and the west side, so it gets the sun all day long, and there's no shadows except for a few days in June that the north light may come in there. But her light will not be affected.
Thank you. Yes, Jerry?
Yeah, Rich, typically in a situation like this where it's right on the property line, one would get an access easement for maintenance on the neighboring property. Is that possible here, or just why don't you react to that?
Well, there's an easement on the, there's a recorded easement on David Goldfarb's side. On the other, I don't know. I mean, it seems to be working out all the time. I mean, it's been working there. We've had the location there for more than 50 years. That garage has been there for, because I was here in 1967 and it was old there. I mean, I don't know. As the applicant testified to, everybody works with one another around there, and he really doesn't see any need for it. That's all. But that garage, good thing you pointed out, Mr. Muller, Jerry, because that garage has been there more than 50 years. Somebody stated it's been there for 50 years. Because I've been there 51. I was there 51 years ago, and it was old then. Yeah.
If I may, Professor Witkin, who lives in Firestone Court behind, quite a number of years ago, I think maybe 25 years ago or so, 20 years ago perhaps, got in touch with my father because she thought that the back of the garage was unsightly, and so my father put siding on it, put siding that matched the rest of the building, and for things like that, of course, no problems with access or any disputes among neighbors that I'm ever aware of.
So it's in the interest of the neighboring property owner to permit access for maintenance purposes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, is that it?
Yeah, hi. So I'm just curious, like parking space number 5, the one in the corner, I guess this is a question for the engineer. Is there enough room for somebody in that spot to get out? Because it looks like that spot is bigger than the space to get out. Just seems like an unfunctional parking space. That's the one in the corner.
Right, that's why we refer to them as stacked parking, because it just as the staff stated,
Yeah.
But even as they function, but they don't really fully comply with the ordinance as far as a valid parking space.
Right. But even like stacked parking, usually there's like one after another, and you just pull one car out and the other car can pull out, but it just doesn't seem functional at all. Like it just doesn't.
Which one is 5?
Yeah, 5 is in the rear right, all the way in the rear left corner.
Yeah.
They would have to pull in first, and then 6 would have to pull in behind them.
Yeah, but I feel like even if you pulled 6 out, I don't think 5 can get out even in that case.
Oh, yes, you can.
You can?
Yeah. Believe
All
me.
right. It just looks.
I parked there many, many times. You can.
Yeah.
You just got to be very careful, that's all.
I've seen the map of the current arrangement, and it's, there's 2 spaces aligned the same way. So 6, it's 2 spaces the same orientation as 6. So I guess you can pull out of 3, and you can get, what is next to 6 out right now. But I think that with this new orientation, it'd be difficult.
You can.
All of this is to say that, I'm curious whether, so are you going to have somebody there, park there like all the time, or, you know, you're just going to keep like the car that, I mean, who's going to park there?
Parking in the back is usually just during business hours, Monday to Friday.
So I guess maybe like a tenant or somebody that doesn't drive frequently will probably park there?
I don't follow, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just curious who's going to park there. I guess it's not going to be the people that go in the office, the
No,
employees.
it's you know, as Ms. Schneller testified, it's the tenant that parks.
Right.
And the employees of the building there.
Yeah. How many employees are there, and how many tenants? Right. And how many tenants? Are there any people living, or is it just office?
All office, and,
Okay.
and the school is the one tenant
Okay.
for the whole building
Right.
since 1996.
Okay. I'm just curious, like, so you utilize every parking spot, like, yeah, okay, all right. That's fine.
I just want to make a comment in support of Zenon's concern, because you're adding the staircase up to the dwelling unit. You're eliminating some significant amount of maneuvering space for that spot number 5. So I don't think it's worth spending a ton of time, because our staff is not even counting that as a parking space. But I think that the owner and the tenant should be prepared for the eventuality that that may not be a usable parking space, and I think the board should be aware of that as well.
Right. And so I guess to segue into that, I mean, you know, I understand that parking in town is you know, difficult and a hot commodity, but I mean, it just seems like unfunctional space and might be better suited as like green space or a garden or something like that. And I don't know if that's something that the applicant is willing to consider, but I see that there's dry wells there. Dry wells are typically not very functional as a stormwater management because they get clogged up and we're kind of like realizing that that's not a good system. So perhaps like turning it into some green space might be, you know, a nice added thing for the environment, but also, you know, for the enjoyment of the people that occupy the space. I don't know, just putting that out there. And I guess to the board, I mean, I've railed on this, you know, in the past, but I mean, I really think that there shouldn't be parking requirements in downtown Princeton. I don't know, they shouldn't be requiring a variance to kind of have less parking. I think that there should just be no parking, you know, requirements. So, but any case.
Well, you're suggesting all of that right now?
No, the second part was just sort of I'm just putting these things out there for people.
Okay.
Food for thought.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd like to make a suggestion to the applicant in terms of extending the neighborhood harmony. I know that there's no requirement for demolition when applying for a demolition permit. There's no notification requirement that you notify neighbors when the demolition is scheduled for, but I think in a nice dense neighborhood like this on a small street that it might be a good idea, given that there's asbestos and lead paint, I assume lead paint somewhere in there, that you just notify the neighbors on the day of demolition so they can make plans accordingly.
That's no problem.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any thoughts on the variances or any comments? If not, Jerry, do we have?
The relief sought is minus site plan approval, 7 variances. The one for parking is 11 required, 6 proposed. And then conditions, the only ones that look definite are they'll bring in enough amperage for a car charging in the garage, and they will install a bike rack under the proposed outdoor stairway. I don't know if anybody wants to take up Zenon's suggestion at all. And in terms of Tim's idea of notifying the neighbors, I would suggest we put that as a condition as well.
Okay.
I'll move to approve
With those
with those.
conditions.
Second?
But that does not include Zenon's idea?
Correct. Is that a second without sentence?
Yes.
Okay. All right. If there are no further comments on this, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Oakman?
Yes.
Mr. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Stankiewicz?
Yes.
Mr. Texarney?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mrs. Gunning?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is for me?
Unbelievable. It's just, a friend of mine said this one from 13 years ago. We found out.
Why don't we go on with the second application of this evening? This is Jared Makalescu. This is continued from July 11th of this year. It's a minor subdivision with variances. It's 140 Hodge Road, Block 1002, Lot 3. And I assume the noticing is from July.
Right. The board has already accepted jurisdiction, so further noticing was not necessary.
All right.
Michael, if you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth? So sworn or affirmed. And if you could mark what you have on the stand as Exhibit PB1 and describe to the board in public what it is.
All right, the display board before you shows the subdivision plan for the property, the subject property at 140 Hodge Road. It's located on the southeasterly side of Hodge Road, just west of Library Place. It's in what's known historically as the Morven Tract of the western section of Princeton. The proposal is to subdivide a property that was formerly the site of a large single-family dwelling, which experienced a major fire last year, in July of last year, I believe, and then in November of last year it was demolished. The proposal is to create two lots out of the single lot And what's being proposed are two non-conforming lots because the required minimum lot width is 125 feet in this zone, the R1 single-family zone. And what's being proposed, both lots are a little bit less than 120 feet in width. So that's the major consideration and why it's not just a conforming subdivision proposal at this point. What else? That's pretty much the major issue. As you know, the neighborhood, the subject property is surrounded by single-family residential structures. The character of Hodge Road in particular are large houses set back from the road with mature plantings. Many have circular or long driveways. And the former large mansion that was on this site had a large circular driveway which is still in place with 2 driveway access points onto Hodge Road. That's pretty much the major issues of the subdivision.
All right. Any questions for Michael? Anyone? Okay. Any engineering, zoning comments on this?
Jack, if you raise your right hand, you swear or affirm that testimony about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sort of affirmed.
So the only comment we had, other than obviously we'd be subject to engineering review of each individual plot plan and tree removal for each individual lot, but the one condition that we thought was important, that the applicant be required to utilize the 2 existing curb cuts due to the proximity of the large London plane trees there.
Tarek, did you have anything you want to add?
Do you swear or affirm that testimony about to give will be the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
So sworn or affirmed.
Now, other than the 2 front or lot width setbacks, there's not really many zoning issues other than that 2 variances. Unless, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Anyone? Yes, David?
I just want to make the comment that, we saw an application fairly similar to this on Snowden Lane, 6-8 months ago, where there was a almost double lot that was being subdivided into 2 non-conforming. And we were looking for a lot more information about the development of those 2 sites in order to evaluate the positive and negative criteria for the variance. And I'm curious whether the applicant has been asked to provide architectural drawings for the proposed buildings on these 2 lots, whether they've been asked to look at the stormwater. I know they were asked to have a tree protection plan of some kind, but I think it's something that we as a board should be seeing. And I just feel, I don't want to sit through a long hearing tonight and then have to say we don't have enough information to make a determination. So I'm putting that comment out here right, at the start, and see if we can get some
Yes, we did get
feedback from other members of the board. And
we did get a report from Cecilia Tasselar on behalf of the Historic Preservation Commission. And that's, I think, the only other.
I did see that.
It was attached to the.
Right. It didn't, it didn't recommend approving the subdivision.
But we have very little information about the adjacent structures or. So.
Madam Chair, just to respond to one of the points that Councilman raised, staff did meet with the applicant, and we did make the suggestion that perhaps some architectural renderings would be helpful in terms of people envisioning what would the appearance of the new homes look like, be. So that was part of the discussion that staff had with the applicant.
Just say, Madam Chair, that I share Mr. Cohen's concerns. I feel like this is there's a paucity of information available for something that'll have a significant impact on the neighborhood.
Anyone else?
I agree with that, too.
Okay, so let's hear from the applicant about lack of information and what information he's going to give us.
We're happy to explain the information that we'll give you. My name is Chris Tarr. I'm the applicant's attorney. Thank you. I'll try a little harder. Thank you for that. To my left and your right is the applicant, Jared Michalesco. Leah Furry Bruder is our planner. She sits next to him. Maximilian Hayden III is our architect, and he sits next to her. If we could be sworn as a group, it might save a little time.
If all the witnesses could raise their right hand? And Chris, you don't have to be sworn in. If you want to be sworn in, do you want to be sworn in?
If Richie was sworn in, I'd like to be sworn in.
Okay. I'll tell you, the envy really is staggering.
He's my idol.
Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. If each of you could state your full name and spell your last name.
Chris Tarr, T-A-R-R.
Jared Michalesko, Michalesko.
Leah, Leah, Fury, Furey, Bruder, Bruder.
Maximilian James Hayden III, Hayden.
Our presentation involves these three witnesses and a slide presentation, the first of which is on the screen. There are 19 slides in total. It's our practice to ask that they be marked as a group, as A1. The pages are numbered. I've given Mr. Muller a list of the titles that I would ascribe to each of the slides to make his work a bit easier. And we will go through the slides asking each of the three witnesses to speak to certain of the topics. And in one case, we're going to bounce back to the planner for final planning testimony.
And Chris, if you could get a hard copy of that to us.
By all means. So, Mr. Michalesco, Jared and I are going to start. The first slide is a picture and a portion of a news story from the Town Topics of July 18. Interestingly, that news story and several others was in the material that the Historic Preservation Commission gathered in connection with its work. So this is taken from your municipal files. I'm going to ask Jared whether that is the condition of the home when he bought it.
Well, yes, I bought it when it was already burned down.
I've highlighted from the caption in the story a sentence which is a bit awkward. I'm going to read it two different ways. Damage to the 9-bedroom mansion was considerable. I left out the phrase, which was empty and had been on and off the market for years, is the second part of that sentence. But damage was considerable and it was empty on and off for years, says the caption. Slide 2 is a quote again from that same news story in the Town Topics. Apparently the Dr. von der Schmidt was the owner, and it says that he tried to sell it for 8 years, but no one bought that house. Is that your recollection or your understanding of the circumstance?
That's what I understand. It was for sale for a while.
And so you chose to demolish the house, and slide 3 is an aerial view of 140 Hodge with the house removed?
That's correct.
You left the trees, particularly along the street and the hedgerow, and the trees around the outside?
Yes.
Now, the next slide, slide 4, we wanted to make clear to the board the particularly large size of this lot relative to zoning requirements. In the R1, the old borough R1 zone, the minimum required lot size is 20,000 feet. And this chart shows that this lot, according to the drawings that you have here, is 72,265 square feet. That's 3.6 times the minimum lot size for the zone. For the required lot size, the floor area at 0.25% would be a 5,000 square foot house, whereas on this property, the FAR would allow an 18,000 square foot house. It is a very large lot. I'm interested, and I point out to you that this board earlier this year, or to the end of last year, worked with the governing body to look at the floor area ratios for undersized lots, and determined, as a matter of fact, that 44% of the residential lots in the municipality are undersized. So it's particularly interesting that this lot is more than 3 times the required lot size for the zone in which it's located. So, Jared, you chose to create 2 lots side by side, one of which was 118.3 feet and the other 118.8 feet, measured at the average setback line.
Yeah, that's correct. I think it's the prevailing setback line right there.
Right. And as Michael pointed out, the only variance is the inability to obtain the width at the building line of 125 feet, and you have 118.35 and 118.82.
Yep, that was the only issue.
I think Mr. West pointed out his recommendation that the 2 existing driveway openings through the hedge remain, and that the London plane trees also not be disturbed, and you were willing to do that.
Yes.
Now, I've placed on as slide number 8 an alternative design or plan for this lot. It is so large that one could place a conforming municipal road into the lot with a cul-de-sac and a front to back configuration of the homes. I think the board understands the difference between an application with a variance and an application without a variance, or where it's conforming. By implication, you can see that Jared has decided that a more appropriate application would be the one that he has made. Side-by-side lots, 118 feet wide and change, as compared to a conforming scenario which you see on the screen, where one lot would face the Hodge Road. The upper black box is a house shape set at the prevailing setback line. And in the bottom, there's another box that faces the cul-de-sac. So I think it's important, as you consider what's being done here, that a clear alternative would have been to do this arrangement. And we're not going to criticize this arrangement, because it could be that someday he makes an application of this sort. But the other, we thought, was better, and you'll hear from the planner regarding its consistency with other homes in the neighborhood. By the way, the 2 lots that appear on slide 5 are each almost 2 times the minimum required lot size. The one to the left is 1.7 times the minimum lot size. The one to the right is 1.9 times the minimum lot size, which, as I say, is just about 2 times the minimum lot size in the R1 zone. Unless there are any questions of Mr. Michelesko, I'm going to go to our planner and ask her to give her the first part of her testimony.
Anyone?
Thanks. I'm going to stand, if that's okay. Is that all right?
You have to speak into the microphone.
Is it okay with you if I stand? Yes?
I'm curious. I just have one quick question, which is, since you could create these two lots with a conforming road, I assume you could also conform with the current flag lot ordinance? No?
There is no flag lot ordinance in the borough, just the township.
Interestingly, as you look at the neighborhood drawings, you'll see that the lot to the left of this lot has a flag lot, which must have been created through some variance or other condition, but there's a front-to-back arrangement to the left. We'll look at the tax map together. So what you have before you is a CV, the curriculum vitae for Leah Fury-Bruder. Her professional achievements are there. I'll ask her to just speak a bit in more practical terms so as to qualify as a planner.
Good evening. My name is Leah Fury-Bruder. I am a professional land use planner. I'm licensed in the state of New Jersey. I am also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. I have a bachelor's degree from American University, a master's of city and regional planning from Rutgers University, the Blaustein School. I've been licensed for 15 years, and I've been practicing in the field for 19 years. I've testified before approximately 50 different municipalities in New Jersey, and I have been on both sides. Until very recently, I was the township planner for Evesham Township, and you look like you've had enough of my qualifications.
I think we accept your qualifications.
Thank you.
Thank you, Leah.
Okay. All right, so Chris, if you would just switch to the next. Okay, so as you've already heard from Mr. Tarr and Mr. Michalesco, the applicant proposes to divide the 72,000 and change square foot lot at 140 Hodge Road to create two lots for single-family homes. The property is located in the R1 residential zoning district, which is section 17A-227 through 238 of the Borough Zoning Code. This allows single-family homes on a lot a minimum of 20,000 square feet, as you know. The proposed lots will comply with the bulk and area requirements in every way except for the 7-foot deficiency on the lot width. They will be approximately 18 feet wide where 125 are required. So in preparation for the presentation, I did visit the R1 zoning district in this neighborhood in particular so I could get a sense for the feel and the character of the area and the neighborhood and get an understanding between this site and its relationship to the street and the neighborhood. As you all know, the subject site is located on the south side of Hodge Road, and it's in a beautiful and traditional neighborhood, I think referred to as the west end of the borough neighborhood. Also, I've seen it referred to as the Morven Tract. These are a few representative photographs that I took last Friday of houses in the neighborhood, just in terms of what the architectural diversity is in the neighborhood. What you see on the screen and on the slide now is just a red line around the residential lots that are in block 10.02, and the subject property is highlighted in blue. This neighborhood is characterized by grand and gracious homes in a variety of architectural styles with mature landscaping. There are many lots in the vicinity that do not comply with the 125 lot width requirement. These non-conforming lots blend seamlessly into the neighborhood. As a pedestrian or someone driving through the neighborhood, you would not know which ones are compliant and which ones are not. The homes and the landscape are designed consistent with the prevailing neighborhood character on both the conforming lot width lots and the ones that are non-conforming. If I could have the next slide. Within that highlighted block, there are actually 43 residential lots. At least 41% of those lots have non-conforming lot width dimensions, and I say at least because I did not count the lots that are on cul-de-sacs because their lot width is measured at the building setback, and I didn't have all the information to make that calculation. precisely on each lot. So I say at least because that's just on the rectangular lots. So 41% of the lots, of the rectangular lots within that block are non-conforming as to lot width. In fact, beginning just 2 lots to the west on the same side of Hodge Road, there are 3 lots adjacent to one another that are comparable to the proposed lots in terms of lot width. And on this slide, you see slides of 144, 146, and 148 Hodge Road. Block 10.02, Lot 2, which is 144 Hodge Road, is approximately 31,000 square feet in area and 110 feet wide. 146 Hodge Road is Block 10.02, Lot 19, and that's 32,000 square feet plus or minus and 118 feet wide. And then 148 Hodge Road, Lot 18, is approximately 31,000 square feet in area and 110 feet wide. So these are just a few examples that demonstrate that the proposal is consistent with the existing development pattern in the neighborhood and that the proposed lots are suitable for development that will complement the neighborhood and enhance the area. Next. Thank you. And as has already been indicated by the applicant does agree with the recommendations of the board's planner and engineer and also the HPC regarding the existing hedge and trees along the streetscape and along the right-of-way and to use the existing driveway openings. These features will be preserved and it will ensure that the new homes do not have an undue impact on the existing rhythm of the street and it will not undermine the established appeal of the streetscape. The applicant also agrees to comply with the engineer's comments regarding a few engineering comments that were provided related to the setting of pins, lot descriptions, monumentation, tree removal and location, and outside agency approvals. So I'm going to come back after the applicant's architect gives a little presentation, and I will do my required planning testimony as to the positive and negative criteria at that time. Thank you.
So we could save the questions for later or take them now as you choose.
Well, I do want to just ask whether you have a slide which shows the lot sizes on the other side of Hodge Road, because I feel like your study area is really not the correct study area. This lot is fronting on Hodge Road, and, you know, no one really cares what the lot sizes are in the cul-de-sac that's in the backyards of the houses on Hodge Road. Hodge Road has a specific character, and we haven't gotten to see really what that character is in terms of lot sizes from the study area that you've chosen to show us.
So I looked at that block for the sake of defining a block to look at, but the entire area has been visited and looked at from a bigger picture, although no, I don't have a slide to calculate that percentage.
Okay. I would feel I'd need to have that information, again, to make an informed decision, just following up on my earlier comment.
Are we ready for Mr. Hayden?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. Max has been sworn. Max is an architect here in Princeton. I've put up on the screen a house he's recently done at 20 Green Street in the Witherspoon Jackson Historic District, which is now under construction. It was the John Robeson house and an historic home of some character that he's worked on, and I personally think it's going to win a prize when it's finished, but we'll see. Max, why don't you give the board just a brief rundown of your credentials?
I am a 1982 graduate of Carnegie Mellon University. I came to Princeton in September of 1982. I received my architecture license in 1986. I am a long-term resident of Hopewell Township. I am the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission of Hopewell Township, and I have appeared at many of the municipalities.
Max, if you could get closer to the mic.
I've appeared before both what's formerly known as Princeton Township and Princeton Borough Planning and Zoning Boards and other municipalities throughout the New Jersey.
So Max, you were asked to design some possible homes for the two lots?
I was. And we did a couple sketches to show what we might do. Here is a potential design for one of the lots. We kind of took some of the massing of the house to the left of the lot. It's a 2.5-story, I would say, colonial revival. It has a very classical, symmetrical facade. Hodge is a mix of houses. I've had the pleasure of consulting on two of them. One is the flag lot. My very first job was at 37 Hodge, and perhaps one of my largest jobs was 15 Hodge, the Grover Cleveland house. It's a wonderful street. I was very happy to be asked to do some sketches and work on the project, and we're trying to do something very sympathetic and something that will fit right in, and hopefully when you drive by you'll go, oh, what another lovely old house.
So that was slide 15. We're going then to slide 16 for the other lot.
This is again similar in massing, again very symmetrical. This would be a stucco and brick combination, several chimneys. A lot of the houses that are built today don't have chimneys. All of the houses on Hodge have chimneys. All of the houses on Hodge have operable shutters, or most of them do. We're just, again, trying to do something sympathetic.
Any questions?
Well, just to clarify, these are possible designs, but not anything you're committing to.
The applicant thinks they're fine, and we wanted to present you what he intends to build. I'm sorry, I wasn't speaking into the microphone. So, to answer your question, Mr. Cohen, these are the houses that the applicant would build there. This is one of the houses that he would build there, and this is the other.
So he's committed to building these houses? Maybe you
Could we not talk to each other until it's our turn? So, Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to get too deep into this because I think that the HPC, the Historic Preservation Committee, is asked to have another look at the design of the houses once they are developed. So I personally, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I feel comfortable deferring on the design review aspect to HPC. But I do feel like there should be some condition associated with design should the application be approved, whether it's a condition that designs that have been presented here are actually going to be used, or that HPC will have more than just courtesy review.
Could I just ask, we've seen these individual sketches. I would really like to have seen them side by side, so just to see how similar the houses are. I mean, obviously, it's the same size lot. You're dealing with certain problems and so on, but it always betrays the fact that we've had a subdivision when you have a pair of houses that look similar side by side. I mean, this is the one thing you don't get on Hodge Road. When I first knew the Manans and the house that was here, I was always struck by the fact that Shirley Morgan, who built his own house across the street, had managed to be two very different houses with great similarities.
Wanda, could you please speak up? Could you please speak up?
Yes, I was going to say, I was always struck by the house that was burned down here, which was Shirley Morgan House design, that Morgan built this, and then a couple years later, he built his own house across the street, and the size of the house was not so different, the design was not so different, but he did not replicate things. And when I see two designs like this, I really worry about the amount of replication. When you're in a neighborhood like this, a lot this size, spending this kind of money, quite frankly, for a house, you want individual architecture, so.
Well, if you look carefully at the drawings, they're not exactly the same. There's a lot of
I know
nuance.
they're not
And
the same, but.
the fenestration changes from floor to floor. The materials are different. The massing is actually a little different. The roof lines are different. The chimneys are different. We also didn't want to do the house of 17 gables that's so popular today. We didn't want to do a very modern house like that's in the block from 206 to Library that doesn't really fit the neighborhood. And we didn't want to do a poor imitation. So.
Right, but I would appreciate just seeing them side by side and thinking about it. So you will, if you're presenting this to HPC, I'm sure they'll want to do that also. Any? Yes.
Oh, no, I, nothing.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Was
and
that a
maybe
bid?
this is, oh, excuse me. Not sure whether right now is the right time, but at some point I'd like to understand better the Morven neighborhood or Morven tract history, significance, et cetera, and if there is some related rationale with regard to the size of the existing lot. I just want to understand that context, that historical context better than I do.
I bet that Mrs. Gunning and I are the only ones who remember the fight in 2012 about the Morven Tract being declared an historic district or not, and it was not. And we'll get to that.
The Morven Tract is the property that went with Morven, the house. It was in about 1890, the family declared bankruptcy. The land was divided off. One member of the family took the land for development, and there were two development phases. This is phase 2 of the Morven Tract development. But these pieces, they were laid out, but they were kind of sliced off so that the lot sizes are not really replicated, and the lot lines are a little odd, and they ended up with a few pieces that they couldn't use for years, like that strangely shaped piece at the corner of Library Place and Hodge Road and so on. But it is called the Morven Tract just because it was the land that went with Morven. So.
And early on, when you made a point of, seemed to me, stressing that the house that burned had been on the market for years and years and nobody bought it, were you trying to make the point that nobody bought it because the lot was too big? Is that what we were supposed to take away from that, in your view? Or
Just nobody bought it.
nobody bought it?
So if we talk about adaptive reuse, we like to think in those terms, and I gather, as well as it might have been built when it was first built, it was in apparently pretty bad shape. And then it burned and made it even in worse shape.
Well, and part of the problem with some of these larger houses is that they were built at the turn of the century, the teens, the 20s and 30s, and they were designed for formal living. People had many staff members. The wings were often for the servants, and there was not a open floor plan that people embrace today. There wasn't the family room connected to the kitchen. It was a formal living room, perhaps a study, a formal dining room, a butler's pantry, a kitchen, and ancillary rooms. So that house was really geared for a very large staff, and a lot of people couldn't relate to it. So everyone walked into there thinking, we have to renovate this and do such large-scale renovations. Surely there's something else that's available that isn't as large of a project and is already done. That's probably why it sat on the market. It's why 107 Library Place sat on the market. It has a big room in the back that no one knew what to do with. The people that have bought it are going to make it into a gym. So, very, very so specialized that it takes someone that eventually comes along. But 107 Library was for sale for at least 5 to 7 years. So it's the odd configuration and the large size that I think really made this house not sellable.
Okay, other questions? Anyone?
So if there were no questions, Ms. Sherry Bruder was going to come back and finish her planning testimony, and then we were assuming the public would want to speak.
Thank you. In considering the requested variance relief, the planning board must consider the positive and negative criteria. The lot width variances are proposed under the C2 variance criteria, often also called the flexible C criteria. For a C2 variance, we must demonstrate that the purposes of municipal land use law are advanced by the deviation from the zoning ordinance requirements, and that the benefits of the deviation substantially outweigh any detriments. Further, that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and will not substantially impair the intent and purpose of the zone plan and master plan and zoning ordinance. So as I mentioned earlier in preparing for tonight's hearing, I've reviewed the relevant sections of the zoning code as well as the master plan and the 2017 reexamination, and I've visited the site in the neighborhood. Now, the proposal advances the purposes of municipal land use law and the municipality's community vision. Developing this site as proposed will be consistent with the rhythm of the existing neighborhood. It will be in keeping with the vision and the principles articulated by the town's master plan and the more recent neighborhood character initiative. The proposed lots will be in excess of the required lot size and will meet all of the bulk and area requirements except for the lot width. Though a lot width variance is requested, the proposed lots will fit into the existing development pattern. Once completed, the homes will complement the neighborhood and will become part of the community's fabric. It is my professional opinion that the requested deviation from the lot width requirement advances the purposes of municipal land use law and that the benefits substantially outweigh any detriment. And I'll mention those specific purposes of municipal land use law that are advanced by this proposal. First, Section 2A of the municipal land use law encourages municipal action to guide the appropriate use or development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. The proposal promotes the general welfare by providing a continuation of the existing development pattern and enabling investment and contextually appropriate infill development in a residential neighborhood, which contributes to the vitality of the neighborhood. Section 2E promotes the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of person, neighborhood, communities, and regions, and preservation of the environment. By virtue of the town's master plan and the zoning, the municipality has determined that this area of the town is appropriate for residential density that equates to a 20,000 square foot lot size. This proposal is in keeping with the traditional development pattern in the area, which is very much supported by the master plan and the zoning. The purpose at Section 2G is to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses and open space, both public and private, according to their respective environmental requirements in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. This large property in an established neighborhood is an appropriate location for an additional residential dwelling, as it'll be in harmony with the surrounding uses and the environment. Preservation of the original house on this lot is not an option as a result of the catastrophic fire, and at this juncture, the applicant has a large vacant lot. The master plan acknowledges that there is a very limited available land in Princeton and that the community's character is dependent on the balance between appropriate growth and redevelopment and preservation. this being an appropriate place for residential development, essentially at a density of 2 dwelling units per acre. And as we have noted, there is a compliant option, which is more impactful. Lastly, Section 2I promotes a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques and good civic design and arrangement. This minor subdivision will facilitate the continuation of the historic development pattern. It'll enable the applicant to design and construct interesting, high-quality buildings that reflect the traditional character and the architectural diversity of the neighborhood. So then on just a little bit about the master plan. The most important takeaway from Princeton's master plan as it relates to this proposal is the vision and the community values. The major goals and objectives of Princeton's master plan and reexamination reports recognize that the town faces a shortage of vacant, easily developable land. And the documents recommend that new development and redevelopment should be compatible with surrounding neighborhood character and not negatively impact the natural environment. From a residential land use perspective, in addition to addressing the municipality's affordable housing needs, one of Princeton's primary focuses in all the master plans and reexaminations has been the preservation of neighborhood character. This is the theme that rings throughout all of the documents. Also, the town has been sensitive to the impact of, quote, tear downs, which is the demolition of residential structures and the replacement of smaller, medium-sized homes with much larger homes, which impact community character and affordability. At the time of the 2017 reexamination, the Planning Board observed that the problem persisted and noted that Princeton has enacted new zoning to begin to address the concern and that a neighborhood study had been completed. The Neighborhood Character and Zoning Initiative that was undertaken, I think beginning in 2016, included a survey of the prevailing residential characteristics by zoning district. The study compared the current zoning requirements to the current conditions on the ground in each of the zones. In the borough's former R1 zoning district, the required lot width of 125 feet was compared to the typical condition, which was identified in that report as being 100 feet. And this proposal is 118 feet. The Neighborhood Character Zoning Initiative identified some of the perceived problems associated with tear downs in Princeton and recommended some potential solutions. Now, though the demolition of 140 Hodge Road resulted from a fire and is therefore not a typical tear down, the proposal will avoid some of the problems associated with tear downs, thus alleviating, hopefully, some of your potential concerns about the proposal. These concerns, and these are the following. The proposed buildings will be proportionate to the lot sizes and consistent with the historic development pattern in the neighborhood, i.e. not uncharacteristically large. The proposal will retain the existing hedge and the tree canopy. One of the concerns was removal of tree canopy. The proposal will not include excessive paved surfaces, especially in the front yard area. The proposal will not diminish the character of the street with dominant garages or automobile entry. You saw on the sketches that were provided by Mr. Hayden that you saw the main mass of the house. The garages would be set back from the main mass of the house, and there is adequate room on the lots to accommodate garages set back from the front facade. In reviewing the master plan, I also noted some of the community's goals that will be advanced by the proposal, namely land use goals that aim to preserve and protect the character of established neighborhoods, and ensure that applications protect the valued site features together with the design of contextually appropriate homes. And then housing goals that are related to the promotion and preservation of Princeton's unique community life and housing stock. In this case, the former structure was damaged and demolished. And at this point, the objective is to develop 2 homes that will enhance the housing stock. And we believe that this proposed arrangement is superior to the arrangement, the conforming arrangement that was shown. And lastly, I think I would just say that when zoning is established and zones are drafted, it's necessary to categorize properties and to establish baseline bulk and area standards. When it comes to established neighborhoods that contain a variety of lot sizes and shapes, the standards often can't account for each acceptable condition. So as we've explained earlier, a significant percentage of the lots within the neighborhood and within the R1 zone overall do not meet the 125-foot width requirement. And the zoning regulations really can't account for every possible scenario. In some cases, and I believe such as this, a deviation is appropriate to respond to the specific conditions on the ground and the characteristics of a property. And that's why this variance process is available, to reconcile inflexible zoning standards with unique situations and conditions. This proposal will complement and enhance the traditional character and form of the neighborhood and the street. The principal dwellings will face toward the street and relate to the street. They'll include front and sidewall articulation as is recommended by your master plan and code. The proposal is compatible with the character of the area, will enhance the neighborhood, and promote the community's values. All in all, there will be no substantial detriment to the public good and no substantial impairment of the zoning ordinance or master plan. The proposed homes will be well designed and carefully sited, will be less impactful than a conforming subdivision could be. That's it for now.
Thank you very much, Leah.
Thanks.
While we're at it, slide 17 is on the screen. You mentioned the fact that a number of the lots were narrower than the 125 feet. I take it the lots that are in a light blue color are all less than 125 feet in width?
They are, and my only caveat was that those that are on the two circles, Campbellton Circle and Orchard Circle, I didn't count when I did the count because I wasn't 100% sure whether or not they comply or not. Thanks.
So that represents our case in chief. As I often do, I like to wait with any comments that I make until after the public has spoken. But we're quite happy to have the matter turned over for public comment if you so wish.
Yes, David?
I just have a question relating to the conforming subdivision. I think this is for Jack, probably. If they were to come in with that conforming subdivision with a public road, that would be a major subdivision? Or would that still be a minor since it was 2 lots?
I believe it's because you have the road, I believe that pushes it to a major.
Yeah. So we would see engineering and
Yes.
tree protection and all those kinds of things
That's
that we're
correct.
not seeing on this application.
Madam Chair, my name is Jeffrey Barron. I'm an attorney at law admitted in the state of New Jersey. I represent John Wachter. I'd like to have the opportunity to cross-examine the witnesses pursuant to the municipal land use law who have testified today. Whether you prefer to do it before you hear the testimony of the public or not is of no consequence, but I would like the opportunity to do that.
Could you state again who you represent?
Yes, John Wachter Jr., W-A-C-H-T-E-R. He's a resident of Hodge.
Jeffrey Barron.
You might as well go ahead with your cross-examination.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the applicant, first of all, sir, when you bought this property, did you know that it was currently only permitted for the development of one home?
Say that again?
When you purchased the lot, did you know that without obtaining variances, you would only be permitted to construct one home?
When I purchased the house, I knew I needed a variance, yes.
Okay. Are you a builder, sir?
Yes.
Okay. And when you purchased this house, what type of variance did you understand you needed?
Well, that would be what we're showing on the screen, sir.
What did you think that you would do with this lot if you couldn't get the variances?
Well, since the previous house was already burned and really not salvageable, it would have had to been rebuilt with a new house.
So you understood that if you did not receive a variance, you would have to build one house on this lot.
Yes, sir.
Were you prepared to do that?
Yes, sir.
What changed your mind? Why don't you want to build one house? Money?
I don't have an answer for that.
would you be kind enough, well, let me use the exhibit that your staff put up.
Take the mic with you.
No.
Now it's on. I don't think this exhibit has been marked.
It's PB1.
Yes, it is. That's why I'm looking at you. Is it marked somewhere that I don't see it? Upper left. Oh, yes, thank you. So it's P1. This is a plan that was introduced by your staff. I think it's very interesting that when we talk about the size of the lots, look at this lot across the street. Looks to be as bigger. Look at this lot across the street. Looks to be as bigger. Look at this lot next door, but for the cutout here, looks to be about the same size. Look at this lot here, very close. So although cherry picking might be effective, do you know for a fact that these lots are all about the size of your lot?
Are you asking me?
I am. You're the builder. You bought it.
I'm going to try to restate your question. Do I know the surrounding lots are the same size as my lot?
Do you know that this lot, this lot, this lot, and this lot, all abutting this lot, are approximately the same size as the lot you purchased?
Mr. Barron, could you identify the lots by number?
Yes. Lot 5.01, block 8.01. Lot 4, block 8.01. Lot 4, block 1.02. And lot 72, block 1.02.
I mean, visually they appear to be the same size.
Okay. How about from your experience? Have you seen the houses on these lots?
Well, when you drive in the area, you really can't see much besides the driveway.
Why is that?
A lot of the house is hidden.
Why is that? How is that done? How is it hidden? By what?
It's the same as is right in front of my house, the hedge and the trees.
So those hedges and trees all going to stay exactly the way they are?
That's the plan.
Would you agree as a condition of approval that you won't remove any trees or hedges in the front of the property?
Mr. Barron, I think he did.
No, I don't think he did.
For the record, he does now.
Okay. Sir, how many cul-de-sac designs, you referred to them as stack lots, how many cul-de-sac designs do you know of back to front that exist in Princeton?
Are you asking me that again?
How many stacked lots back to front, do you know of that exist in Princeton?
Sir, I'm just a builder, sir. I don't know that statistic.
So you didn't look to do your research about this because you gave the board a plan in which you proposed stack lots potentially. You didn't look to see whether any of those existed in Princeton?
I haven't objected yet, but I think we're starting to get a little bit aggressive in the questioning.
Well, there's no foundation for that because their as-of-right plan did not show stack lots. There were two lots on a cul-de-sac.
Yes. And my question is, how many of those are in the borough or township of Princeton? It's an entirely proper question.
The answer was he didn't know. He asked and answered.
Sir, do you know when the other non-conforming lots that were referred to by Ms. Fury-Buter in her testimony, when were those constructed? Do you know, sir?
Which lots?
The other lots on Hodge that are undersized. Do you know when they were constructed?
When the lot was constructed, you don't construct a lot.
When the house was constructed on those lots?
I don't know.
Okay, thank you. Do you have photos of any other homes on Hodge other than the 4 that you showed the board? Which I think admittedly they were all different. Different designs, different materials, all different. Do you have any other photos of houses on Hodge?
No?
Okay. Do you know whether any of those other lots that have been discussed so far had variances granted for the nonconformity from 125-foot width?
No, sir.
Let me just understand, since we don't have a plan. If you were granted the variance, you would want to put 2 homes, 2 garages, 2 driveways, 2 recreational amenities, if appropriate, swimming pools, swing sets, whatever, cars, all of those on what is now 1 lot, correct?
Yes, sir.
I don't have anything further for the applicant. I do have questions for the other witnesses, but not for the applicant.
Go ahead.
Can I proceed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. To the architect, sir, same question I asked before. Do you have photos of other homes on Hodge to indicate the type of homes that have been built on there?
Do I personally have photos? I'm well aware of the neighborhood.
Okay. Are they all different types of homes for the most part?
It's a potpourri. It's a neighborhood that's been built over a period of when the Morven Tract was subdivided in the late 1800s to the 1930s.
So I want to show you a document. I'm going to mark this.
Mark it as 01.
Well, there might be more than one objector, so I was going to say maybe I ought to mark it OW1 for
Fine.
objector
Sure,
Wachter 1
sure.
with today's date. Sir, have you ever seen this sketch before?
Yes, I have.
Do you know who prepared it?
I prepared it
Okay. Do you know when you prepared it?
last week.
Mr. Barron, do you have any extra copies that you can share with the board?
I just got those today, sir, so no,
Okay.
I don't. I'm sorry.
Could you tell us what it's a sketch?
Yes, I was going to ask him what it was because he said he prepared it. So if I might, Madam Chair, let me do that. Is that a sketch of homes that could be constructed on 2 lots if it were permitted by the board?
It was one idea that we looked at.
Okay. But as of the 29th, is that the date of that sketch, the 29th that it was submitted of
Says
September?
The 25th.
25th, I'm sorry. Was that the only idea as of that date?
That was the initial idea.
Okay. You put in 2 identical houses, didn't you? Those 2 houses are mirror images of each other.
This is a concept sketch. This is not a
I didn't
submitted formal plan.
Okay, I didn't ask you that. I asked you. They are mirror images of each other, are they not?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Have you ever prepared a minor subdivision plan or a concept plan that shows the type of home that would actually be built on the lot? On a plat. I'm not talking about the renderings that you showed us tonight. And
No, I have not.
Okay. I would like to have the board take a look at this. This is, for your information, this is from your file. We just got this pursuant to an open request. Okay, That's all I have for the architect. Now for Ms. Truebruder, please. Ms. Truebruder, we've already established that on the, and I believe that's the plan that you prepared that's right up on the projector right now. You did not show what's on the other side of Hodge, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was it not significant to you what's on Hodge on both sides?
I visited the entire neighborhood.
You went so far as to go pretty far down in the other direction to show lots, but you didn't go very far up to show lots. Is there any reason for that?
Only because they're all shown on the same tax map.
Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to show the neighborhood, you could have certainly shown that as well, right?
Yes, I guess to answer what you're getting at, I wasn't trying to exclude anything by any means. The neighborhood has a diversity of lot sizes, and they include some that are significantly large, as is my Mr. Michalesco's lot, and they have existing homes on them, and there are some that are significantly smaller. That was the only point that I was trying to make.
Okay. Do you know when the non-conforming lots were developed on Hodge?
I think we've established that the neighborhood was developed sometime between the 1890s and 1930s for the most part.
From your knowledge, do you know of any other homes built since then?
Yes. Other homes built in the area since then?
No, built on Hodge.
Built on Hodge? No, I don't know.
Okay. So if they were built on Hodge, they would have to be built to the new standard that's larger lots and more lot width. Isn't that true?
Not if it's an existing lot.
Well, if it's an existing lot, it's not going to be redeveloped. That's what I asked you. You don't know of any that have been built on in recent years.
We were back to lots and houses. We're not differentiating. I think I take your point to have been, if you have a lot where the house burned down, you can build a modern house on a lot and rebuild the house consistent with what the old one was.
Thank you, counsel. That wasn't my question, but that's interesting.
Why don't you clear it up? The house.
I want to know if she knows how many of the houses that exist on Hodge were constructed since this zoning ordinance was in effect.
I don't know, but I do know there have been renovations of homes.
Okay. Do you know of any lots that obtained lot width variances on Hodge, either from this board or from the zoning board?
I don't know.
Did you look at the records to see what they showed?
I did not.
Okay.
From a planning perspective, the important point is what the character of the neighborhood is and the development pattern, and how what you're proposing impacts upon what is there, and how it may either detract from or add to the neighborhood character. So it didn't seem useful or fruitful to me to dig back and see whether or not anyone had obtained a variance. It's neither here nor there. The lots are there, and they're less than 125 feet in width.
Let's talk about your planning testimony, your actual justification of the variance. First of all, is it fair to say you don't know what will be built on these two lots?
No, it's not fair to say that.
Okay. What will be built on these two lots? I want to know the size. I want to know the materials. I want to know the style. Pretty much as you can give me.
Okay. Well, as Mr. Barron knows, and we all know, that it's not typical at the time of a minor subdivision to have all the details. However, when the board has regulations and requirements and design standards, you think through whether or not you can comply with those things. And that's what the applicant has done, as he has gone from what he thought initially was a pretty simple minor subdivision, then came to understand that it's more complicated because of the variance and because of the need to think through all these details. It's been evolving. So hence the evolution and these sketches that you see tonight, one of which is up on slide 15. The applicant is agreeing to basically continue to evolve the design so that it meets the town's requirements, and that it will meet the architectural standards insofar as they require fenestration, variety and form, the characters, the materials for the neighborhood, the high quality traditional type development. That's what he's going after. I think we know this approximate size of the houses. somewhere in the 6,000 square foot range. I don't know what else I need to answer.
What are the materials?
I would have to defer that to the architect.
Do you know whether any discussion has been made as to using similar materials or similar designs as homes that are existing on Hodge presently?
I have to defer that to the architect too, but I would just say that there's quite a diversity of architectural styles, so those classic materials that are used would surely be reflected, but I defer to Max on the details.
Part of your testimony was that the purposes of the municipal land use law under 4055D2A through the end of it, O or P, whatever it is these days, would be advanced by the grant of this variance. And you indicated that general welfare would be advanced. I'm sorry, did you expound on how general welfare would be advanced by granting a variance of 2 feet? What's it going to do for the general welfare? How's it going to be advanced?
So are you asking me to repeat the testimony that I provided?
I'm asking you a more direct question. I understood your testimony, but I don't understand how it will advance general welfare.
So the general welfare is advanced by the investment in the neighborhood and keeping the neighborhood vital, ensuring that the neighborhood is a place where people want to invest and continue to build homes when there's an opportunity, which is a rare opportunity since there was this catastrophic fire. I certainly think that advances the general welfare.
You heard your client say that he would build a house regardless, right?
Pardon me?
You heard him say that if he couldn't build 2 homes, he would have built 1 home.
There's also a conforming subdivision that we showed that has 2.
I didn't ask that. I said, did you hear his testimony when I asked him?
I did.
Okay. So the general welfare would have been advanced any old way, wouldn't it? Because something would have been built there.
Right. The investment in the neighborhood is good for the neighborhood.
You also indicated that it's appropriate densities, one of the purposes of Section 2, appropriate densities. Tell me how you came to that conclusion. What did you look at to reach that conclusion?
I looked at the neighborhood, the density that's already existing in the neighborhood, the fact that the town has a zoning district, the R1 district, which allows 20,000 square foot lots. Certainly in the area, there's a vast range of lot sizes. But that zoning provides the density that is deemed to be acceptable by the municipality.
But that density could be 20,000 square foot lots. It could be 50,000 square foot lots. It could be 80,000 square foot lots. They would all be consistent with the R1 in one way or another, wouldn't they?
Generally, yes.
Okay. You also indicated that it would provide a variety of uses. This is the Section G of municipal land use law that talks about commercial, industrial, residential, agricultural, et cetera. There are potentials to create residential in this area right now, aren't there? I mean, all this is going to do is add one more house, in essence. Isn't that all it's going to do?
It will. It'll add one additional house.
Okay. And then you talked about desirable visual environment, and I know from knowing you for years, you've probably already seen this one coming down the street. If this variance were granted, there would be 2 driveways, not 1. There would be a second home, from your testimony, 6,000 square feet, but I'm not holding you to it. I'm just saying approximately that. There would be more parking because the parking would be provided for 2 houses, not just 1. There would be 2 garages, and there might be additional amenities, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I would say, add one thing though. There will not be additional driveways. There are already 2 driveways.
You're right. There are 2 curb cuts. I apologize. Whether they're in the same location is, I'm not concerned.
They will be in the same location.
Okay, fine, then they'll be in the same location. So by putting a second house on, the visual environment will be changed.
The visual environment will be changed, yes.
Okay.
But I would also add, I think what my point was, that the town's master plan and other planning documents value the streetscape, the established mature landscaping and the streetscape. Therefore, the applicant proposes to maintain those while also adding new houses to the lot. So there's a balance there between adding new, attractive, visually attractive development and then maintaining the existing visually attractive landscape.
I just want to go over the standard in NJSA 40:55D 70C2, as you referred to it, the sometimes called, well, often called flexible C variance. And that requires, I just want you to tell me if you agree or you don't agree, that the purposes of zoning in Section 2 would be advanced by a deviation from the zoning ordinance requirements, in other words, a variance. And the benefits of the deviation would substantially outweigh any detriment. Is that the standard?
Yes.
So it's the flip of the negative criteria. In the negative criteria, you have to prove there's no substantial detriment. But in the positive criteria, the applicant's burden is to show that it would be a substantially better plan from a planning standpoint than just developing it in accordance with existing zoning, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In regard to the negative criteria, you would admit that this is a detriment to the zone plan and the zoning ordinance, or the zone plan and the master plan. The question is how much of a detriment, correct? If it doesn't comply, it's a detriment. But the statute says substantial detriment, correct?
It does say that, but I don't think there's a detriment, and because I'm a believer in practicality, and I believe that we should look at planning, at zoning, as we need to have a base from where we begin. We need to draw the line somewhere, but I believe that from a planning standpoint, there is and should be room for flexibility when warranted.
And finally, no substantial detriment to the general welfare. What is your understanding of what that means?
In this case, it's the detriment to the neighborhood more than the broader welfare.
So what is the neighborhood? Is the neighborhood just Hodge Street? Or is the neighborhood everything you showed in your plan? Everything that's in red? Everything that should have been on the other side of Hodge that isn't showed? What's the neighborhood?
Really, the neighborhood needs to be defined by the people who live there, because it's it's the area that they relate to in terms of their neighborhood. I can't define that line.
That wasn't a planned punchline, but it sure looked good. Let's see if I have anything else. Oh, yes, Mr. Bruder, do you know the size of the two lots that are adjacent on either side to this lot?
I can't read it from here, but yeah, I've looked at them.
Do you have is that a tax map?
Yes.
You know that tax maps are not always accurate?
They're not always accurate, but they're typically
Okay,
fairly
so do you
close.
have that somewhere, that plan came from? Do you have it so you could read the size?
Yeah, I could. I could, it might be might be up here, let me check.
I know, but I didn't want to stop you from trying if you thought it might be on there. Okay, do you know if anyone on your team has that?
Do you already know? Can you tell it sounds like you know. Why don't you
But but no disrespect to your counsel, but I can't testify. Although you've heard me testify lots of times, I know. Tonight, I'm not going to testify. That's all I have. We do have a presentation, professional planner. There are a number of residents, not of whom I represent, who want to speak this evening, just to give the chair some flavor for what may or may not be in the future.
Okay, are you telling me that you have someone else who wishes to present as part of your testimony on this, or?
Well, I just cross-examined. I didn't present any testimony. I just
Okay.
cross-examined witnesses. I do have an affirmative presentation that I want to make. I do have a professional planner to make that. I have Mr. Wachter here, and I know that there are a number of residents from this area who I don't represent, but I know that they want to be here.
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for the courtesy. Okay. Madam Chairman, if I may.
If you could identify yourself.
Surely. My name is Ron Yazurowski.
How do you spell the last name?
I'm an attorney with offices
I'm
in...
sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
Yeah, could you, if you could,
Let me hear what. Can you hear me now? My name is Ron Yazurowski. I'm an attorney with offices in Red Bank, New Jersey.
could you spell your last name, please?
G-A-S-I-O-R-O...
Wait. G-I-S...
G-A-S-I-O-R-O-W-S-K-I.
Okay.
I represent Kent and Laura Hochscher, who are the owners of the property immediately adjacent to the proposed subdivision, and I'm representing their interest in this matter.
Okay, could you, two things. Could you spell the last name of your clients?
Hogsshire. And they reside at 142 Hodge Road. And as you're facing the subject property, it's immediately to the right. Before I begin, I've listened to the cross-examination of my colleague, Mr. Barron, and I do not want to be repetitive because that will only serve to drag this hearing out unnecessarily. And I would be very commend Mr. Barron for his cross-examination, and I would submit to the board there's not a great deal that I would be adding to that in my cross-examination, and I'd like to proceed with that now, if I may. Okay? I would first like to address some questions to the applicant in this matter, if I may. Mr. Michalesco, Mr. Barron went into the questions with regard to your, I guess, your basic introduction. Do you understand the question?
No.
Okay. When did you first become aware of the fact that the subject property was for sale?
Probably in July or like a couple months, July or August. I mean, I don't exactly remember.
Well, of what year?
I believe it was 1 or 2 months after the fire.
Okay. That would be in
It came up on the MLS for sale.
2018?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you looked at the property, and I take it you are a builder at the present time, and you were a builder at the time you purchased this property, correct?
Yes.
Am I correct in saying that you have in fact taken title to the property and you are the owner of the property at the present time?
Yes.
When you were shown the property, you were in fact at that time a builder of homes, were you not?
Yes, I was.
Prior to that date, how many homes would you say, well, let's first say, how many years were you in the business of being a builder?
It's the fourth time we've asked whether he's a builder, and how many other homes he's built is not
I said I
relevant.
was going to keep my cross-examining short, and I shall.
Well, okay, but I object on the basis of relevance to how many homes the man's built.
Okay. Mr. Milichesko, with regard to the house that was standing, you say that you first examined it several months after the fire took place?
Yes.
Now, in doing that, prior to closing, did you have occasion to walk through the interior of the home?
I walked through it, yes.
How many times did you do that?
I think once.
Once? Okay. How much time did you spend there?
Inside or outside the property?
Pardon?
Are you saying inside or outside of the house?
I can't hear you.
Inside or outside?
The inside.
Oh, maybe 5 minutes.
5 minutes inside the house. Okay. Now, when you walked inside the house, did you walk and cover and look at all 2 or 3 floors of the house, or did you just spend 5 minutes walking around the first floor?
Well, I mean, it also has a basement, which I would consider a
Did you-
floor.
did-
But yes, I did walk it all.
Okay. Now, I know you're here today with a historic architect. Did you, at that time, when you walked through the property, did you ever make an attempt to determine exactly how badly the home in question had been affected by the fire and what it would cost, or if you could, in fact, reconstruct it and renovate it?
Sir, I mean, this picture doesn't show you, but in the back of the house, it's even worse. And you can see on the screen, you can see all the top rafters, the
I
whole
don't
top of
want
the
to know
house.
what I see on the screen. I want to know what you did to make a determination.
He's answering the question. Please.
I want to know what he did to make a determination, what it would cost to restore this house, and if in fact it could be restored.
You asked him whether he knew the extent of the damage to the house, and he was explaining himself. I'd like you to let him finish.
If he wants to explain to me what attempt he made to determine what the extent of the damage was to the interior of the house, I'd love to hear that.
That's what he was answering. Please, could we go on?
What was the extent of the damage inside the house?
I mean, sir, I think it went like 4 alarm. There was 19 fire trucks there. I mean, the whole basement was...
It's not my question. My question is, did you make any attempt to determine what the extent of the damage to the house was on the interior of the house and what it would cost to restore it?
I'm not sure what the relevance of this is.
Well, what I want to know is what this particular applicant intended when he purchased the house in question. Did he intend at any time to renovate it, or was it when he purchased it to simply attempt to get a subdivision from this board? That's what I want to know.
Go ahead. I'm not sure this is relevant, but go ahead.
I mean, I was going to rebuild it.
Now, he's really facing away from me, and I can't hear him when he speaks.
Well, pull the microphone closer.
The speaker's very close to me. I speak into it.
So I'll object on the basis of relevance. If Mr. Mueller tried once, I'll try a second time.
Let me ask you this question.
This newspaper story says the house was, the damage was considerable. That was his answer.
Well, I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at, and I see some damage to the top roof of the house. I don't see...
And he testified that the back is even worse. I mean, he's answered your question.
Well, you can testify all you want. You're not showing us the picture. Having said that, let's go beyond that. When you purchased this property, as Mr. Barron brought out, you in fact knew what the zoning was, didn't you?
Did I know what the zoning was?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an engineer.
I'm sorry?
I'm not an engineer.
Well, I'm not asking you an engineering question. I'm asking you whether you knew what the standards of the zone were with regard to lot frontage, lot depth, square footage, and the like.
Yes.
Okay. And you're aware of the fact that if, in fact, the lot as it was when you purchased it was totally conforming with regard to the zone, wasn't it?
Did I know it was totally conforming?
Yeah.
Did I know the existing house was totally conforming?
That the lot itself, as it stood at that time, was totally conforming. You could have made an application for a building permit, and there would not have been the necessity of your applying for a variance of any kind.
Yes. And
You were aware of
Yes.
that. At any time prior to your purchase of the house, or at any time immediately after you purchased the lot, did you ever intend or make any plans or hire an architect to prepare architectural drawings for the construction of one house on that totally conforming lot?
No, sir.
Objection is to relevance, please.
Yeah.
Let me go out a little bit further. You testified that you purchased this property shortly after the fire, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, there came a point in time when the lot itself, as it stood, had a house on it, and that house was demolished, correct?
There came a point in time when the house was demolished. Yes, sir.
And was that done by you or by the prior owner?
I demolished the house, sir.
I'm sorry?
I demolished the house, sir.
Okay. So you knew when you demolished this house that you had one of two choices. You could either build a house that was totally conforming, correct? Let me ask you a further question. Any time prior to you coming before this board with a variance, did you ever commission an architect to design a house for you that would be totally conforming with the existing zone?
I don't think any of this is relevant, and I'd ask you to move on.
I think it's relevant, but we'll find out one day, perhaps. Now, just going a little bit further, just have several more questions, and not many at all. You've produced as a witness today the gentleman seated to your left, who, as I understand it, is an architect, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he's here this evening, and I'm not saying that pejoratively. I respect your profession. I didn't want that to sound as if I was diminishing that. Now, acknowledging and admitting his expertise with regard to designing and having constructed houses which would be historic in nature and in character of the surrounding houses, did you ever commission him to design a house for you that would be totally conforming with the existing zone?
We just went through that.
No, sir. That's like the third time you asked the same question.
It's okay.
Did you ever do that?
I would ask that you move on. I don't think that is relevant.
Let's talk about the two houses.
They have an application for a variance to have two
Let's talk
lots.
about the two houses that were proposed as put forward by him. Can we have those up on the screen, please? Okay, now, in looking at those two front elevations of the houses in question, in addition to the front elevation of the houses and the square footage of the houses, there will also be, I would take it, a freestanding separate and apart garage, will there not be?
That's
We didn't say it was freestanding.
I'm sorry?
We did not say that the garage was freestanding.
So
There would be
the garage
garages.
was not designed?
I'm sorry?
No architecturals for the garage?
Not at this point.
Well, having said not at this point, would you agree with me that looking at the front elevations, there is not going to be a front entry garage, which is a part of the home, but rather will be a freestanding garage?
You could enter the garage from the side. It could be attached to the rear of the house. Doesn't necessitate to be a freestanding garage.
Now,
It could be.
Mr. Barron got into this briefly. Did you design not only the front elevations for this house, but did you also design the entire architecturals for the construction of this house?
No, I have not.
Okay. Are these particular front elevations from a home which you, in fact, designed and have the full architectural plans for?
No, these are different houses.
Pardon me?
These are just front elevation studies.
These are just basically stock plans which could have come out of the back of Architectural Digest, aren't they?
No, they are not. There is a house on the corner of Hodge and Library that is a pattern book house, but this is not.
Now, when were you retained by the applicant concerning giving testimony in this matter?
Irrelevant.
In August?
Objection.
When were you retained?
Objection.
Okay.
What is the question?
When was
I'm
he
asking
retained
him
as an
when
architect?
he was retained by
When?
the applicant to give testimony in this matter.
I don't see the relevance of
I
that.
see the relevance because one of the significant parts of his testimony is the applicant is attempting to bolster his case by calling in a respected architect who's going to add some credence to the fact that this is some kind of special design for a historic building. So when was he retained to do that? I mean, he's admitted he's never prepared the plans. All he's given to you is a front elevation. Some of the questions being asked by board members is what exactly will be going there? What are you proposing? What do we have? We have a front elevation not showing any landscaping. He's admitted that he's never done a plot plan. He's admitted he's never placed this upon a survey to show exactly what the setbacks will be, what the front yard setback will be,
Not
what
a
landscaping
requirement.
will be preserved. We have none of that.
It's a minor subdivision application, for goodness sakes,
It's a minor subdivision application looking for a variance.
which does not require plans at all. We did them as a courtesy to the board.
It's courtesy?
A courtesy.
I do think plans are relevant in that they go to the negative criteria, and I think the board can and very well and should evaluate them.
Right, we
But I
stopped-
don't see what,
Now,
the
this is-
relevance of when Mr. Hayden was hired is.
I've listened to the cross-examination of Mr. Barron concerning the planner, and I would rest on the cross-examination that was done by him rather than be repetitive, because I think he covered it quite adequately. Thank you.
Are there any other attorneys representing clients here? No.
All right, let's move on to the public. Open this for public testimony, and I'm going to give you a little more than 3 minutes to speak.
I'm going to attempt
And
to
there
be
are a lot
very
of
short.
you.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
So sworn or affirmed. Could you please state your full name and spell your last name?
My first name is Barry, B-A-R-I. Last name is Erlichson, E-R-L-I-C-H-S-O-N. I'm a resident of 144 Hodge Road. I'd appreciate it if you would put the slide up of the non-conforming houses. Keep going. The pictures that were apparently taken of my home. That's my house on the right. The board should know that that became a lot in 1950 and has not received any variances with regard to the lot size. It was, in fact, substantially renovated in 2008, and at that time did not receive any variances from the zoning board. We have, I think, the dubious honor of being the first project to be subjected to the township's floodwater management plans, stormwater management plans. And so we did substantial work. And just to let you know, it was substantial work because Hodge is, in fact, not immune to flooding. I do want to correct a couple of things. I want to let everyone know that we were, in fact, in town and part of the historic preservation discussion back in the day, and that this part of Hodge Road was not considered as part of the historic reservation designation district during that time. However, there are many of us in the audience tonight that share the honor of having been part of that discussion and who, in fact, testified against being designated a historic district, in part because of the strength of the 2006 zoning rules. We relied on the work done by the township and the borough at the time to strengthen the rules, to make sure that future development of our neighborhood would be in conformance with the tone of the neighborhood. So the idea that this lot and my neighbor's lots are being presented here tonight as non-conforming, they were non-conforming at the time that the 2006 zoning rules were adopted. I believe in good governance, and so I would like to first thank you for your role in for preserving citizen governance. And I think that, while we have this question of neighborhood character, I also have a question of what is the compelling interest for the variance. There is no historic house to preserve anymore. There is no quid pro quo about subdividing this lot so a historic house could be preserved by the economic necessity of building a home next to it. And I also would just like to sort of raise the issue that there are at least 2 other homes on Hodge who have been in similar disrepair that this house was in, obviously not necessarily on fire at this point. And I would suspect that those projects will come back before a board in the not too distant future for subdivision amongst tear down. My husband and I did stand in the street in that late July night and watch the house burn. And it was, of course, shocking and dismaying as we looked at a house that we had walked past for years, obviously, and with the hopes of having a house be in that lot that would, in fact, bring back and represent kind of the luxurious kind of houses that we've grown accustomed to. So, just to sort of sum up, I appreciate the idea that there's a huge economic interest in building 2 homes there versus 1, but I don't know that that's the compelling interest that we'd like to set forth for why variances get granted. Thank you.
Ms. Erlickson, just before you sit down, for the record, could I ask, we're looking at slide number 12.
Yes, sir.
And your testimony is you own what's designated there as lot number 2.
I do,
And,
with my husband.
And up at the top, it reads that the width of the lot at the street is 109.58 feet.
I don't know that to be accurate.
Well, that's from the tax map, and you don't know it to be accurate, but that's what the slide shows.
Yes, it is.
Thanks.
And it is also my testimony that this lot was formulated in the 1950s,
Right.
prior to the adoption of the zoning rule in 2006 that requires the 125-foot setback, side width.
Got it. Thank
I'd
you.
also like to report that, that when we renovated this house, we built the circular driveway. It did not have a circular driveway, and we also replanted the privet hedge to be in tone of the rest of the street. And while much has been said about the existing curb cuts for the house under discussion, it should be noted that although they're talking about 2 curb cuts, they would not be able to maintain circular drives for both of the homes.
So yours is a beautiful home.
Go ahead. Next person, please.
If you could raise your right hand.
Yes?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Yes, my name is Daniel Motto, M-O-T-T-O. I'd like to start out by thanking you for this opportunity. My name is Daniel Motto. As I said, I'm here with my wife, Tina, and we're here to express our strong opposition to the request for the zoning variance at 140 Hodge Road. We own and reside at the property at 161 Hodge Road, and our family have been longtime residents of Princeton. As we've heard tonight, Hodge Road and the surrounding neighborhood have a 100-year history with a unique character. Sycamore-lined Hodge is well known and enjoyed by many residents and visitors. This neighborhood complements the many other unique and wonderful neighborhoods of Princeton. The current zoning requirements, including the lot width requirement, were established to drive responsible development and to preserve the history and character of this area. Allowing a zoning variance and subdivision of the lot at 140 Hodge Road does not provide any benefit to Princeton or to its residents. It does not increase the availability of affordable housing, and it does not allow a Princeton resident to make improvements to their home. The only outcome would be potentially increase the profits of an out-of-town developer. It's my understanding that Mr. Michalewski is an experienced developer who was aware of the current zoning requirements when he purchased the property. And I think this is key. Denying the zoning variance request would maintain the status quo and does not create a hardship. There are no unique aspects of the property that require a variance. I believe it is based exclusively on the developer's desire to make a higher return on his investment. We ask that you deny the zoning variance request to preserve the existing character of our well-established neighborhood and to avoid setting a precedent, and I think this is very important, avoid setting a precedent for other developers looking to profit by non-compliance with Princeton's zoning rules. My wife and I have written a letter to document our opposition, and I have copies here for you, which I'll share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, Mr. Motto, just, if Mr. Motto can come back, I'd like you to read that letter if you could, but basically so all the members of the board and the members of the public and the applicant and his team know what it says, and then they can respond if they want, and anybody else can respond if they want.
Is it long?
How long is it? Did you hear what I said?
Yes, I'm sorry. What I read to you, I did read the letter, what I communicated.
But
That was the letter? What he said?
you have
Yes,
letters
I was reading from the letter.
Okay, so your testimony was the letter. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions I can address, or?
Did you say that you had letters from other people that you were putting in the file, or? I didn't understand that. Okay.
No, I simply shared that I did bring copies of the letter to share with the
All
board,
right,
and
fine.
I've handed them over.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Lauren Hogshire, last name Hogshire. I reside at 130 Hodge Road, the adjacent property to the property in question. I am here today to present a petition from concerned community members regarding the proposed subdivision. I would like to read that petition to the members of the planning board. We, a group of...
I'm sorry. Petitions are not admissible, and that's because you could testify and anybody can cross-examine you, but the other people on the petition aren't here, and if they want...
Okay, I understand that, so I won't submit the petition.
I'm sorry?
I apologize, I won't submit the petition. I would just like to say that we have strong community support from tax-paying neighbors in the neighborhood, what's called the western section of Princeton, that strongly oppose the subdivision. We do not believe that the benefits, we don't really believe that there are any benefits that would provide to the community, the Princeton town itself, and that the motive of the subdivision is exclusively financially driven by the developer. We have had, so I won't submit the petition, but we've spoken with personally and communicated with upwards of 80-something residents of Princeton that oppose the subdivision and the precedent that it sets for future development, particularly in the western section.
I'm sorry, could you give me your address again?
130 Hodge Road.
130.
It's the adjacent property. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
So sworn or affirmed. If you could state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Abigail Woodney Wachter, Wachter. I live at 142 Hodge on the other side of the property.
Mr. Mueller, there's always a question that comes up. If Ms. Wachter is represented by counsel, should she speak?
My husband is represented by counsel. I opted not to be represented by counsel because I felt very strongly about speaking to the board.
Okay.
I also want to mention I've prepared a letter as well. Before I read that, I would just like to mention that I made an offer on the property that burned down shortly before the fire. That property was underwater with the bank, and I believe that much of the reason why it could not sell was because the bank was very difficult in negotiation. So that is my testimony about potentially why a large home could not sell there. Please bear with me here. I get a little nervous speaking in front of a lot of people.
Speak a little closer to the mic.
Sorry about that. As the mom of 3 small children and a parent at a cooperative nursery school, I spend a lot of time volunteering in the classroom to educate young children. It is in nursery school that we really learn to understand, follow, and respect the rules. Rules are established for the benefit, safety, and well-being of everyone in the community. Quick example. In nursery school, when a rule is established to allow a child to take only 1 cookie at snack time, all children are made aware of that rule. If one child gets an extra cookie, it is unfair to the rest of the class. You wind up with a lot of upset kids. Worse, you teach children that they are rewarded for disregarding the established rules. This sets a dangerous precedent. We are here tonight because Mr. Michalesco is asking you to make a special exception and really an exemption to the established R1 zoning rules. And you have both the power and the responsibility to uphold or disregard them. When the applicant purchased the lot at 140 Hodge Road, he was aware of the rules. Nobody cheated him by shrinking his lot size or changing the zoning rules that had been established in 2006 or shrinking his frontage. When my husband and I purchased our adjacent property in March, we too understood the rules, and we put our trust and our faith in you to enforce and uphold the regulations that directly impact the character and historic nature of our neighborhood. Subdivision and spec building will undoubtedly detract from our neighborhood of custom and even often hand-built homes that have defined a piece of Princeton history for over 100 years. To put this in perspective, my home was built in 1904. The house that used to stand at 140 Hodge was constructed in 1922, as was the Hogshire's home next door. This was the same year that President Warren G. Harding stood on the battlefield to dedicate the famous limestone monument. The same year that the Princeton Police Department purchased its first vehicles, 2 Harley-Davidson motorcycles. By the end of that decade, 19 of the 27 homes that currently line Hodge Road were standing, and by 1955, all but 3 of the homes there today had been built. For anyone who cares about the culture and character of Princeton, there is value in that history. Seeing this value, zoning and planning made a deliberate decision to implement R1 zoning rules to prevent subdivision and development for profit rather than homemaking. 2 single-family homes on Hodge Road have been built since these rules were put into place. Neither required chopping up a lot, despite sitting on a combined 2.75 acres. Yet, these 2 homes share an assessed value of $7,719,300. They generated a whopping $203,241 tax dollars last year. This clearly shows that if a single-family home is built on the 140 lot with an attention to quality and character, there is absolutely no need to subdivide for incremental tax dollars. At the end of the day, this comes back to simply upholding the rules to preserve the history and character of Hodge Road. The applicant wants an extra cookie. There is no proven hardship. He simply wants to make more money to benefit himself at the expense of the integrity of a neighborhood and its valuable Princeton history. Mr. Michaelesco and his lawyers might claim that the exception he is asking for is small. I get it, it's not many feet, right? That it's no big deal, but it's a big deal to me. It's a big deal to my family and to our community. It's a big deal to all these people that came tonight and to the over 80 people in our neighborhood that signed the petition. Let me assure you that it is a very big deal to the people who have actually chosen to live here rather than seek profit in one of Princeton's oldest and most historic neighborhoods. This neighborhood has survived world wars and Great Depressions and recessions, but if a precedent is set here tonight to encourage and allow subdivision and spec development, it won't survive much longer. This is a very slippery slope. Please uphold the R1 zoning rules and preserve Princeton's history, character, and culture by voting against this variance tonight. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Wachter, can you submit the letter to, can you submit the
I
letter?
brought copies of the letter as well.
Okay, that's great.
Hi, it's Kent Hogshire. I'm married to Lauren, live at 130 Hodge Road.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
And what was your first name? I'm sorry.
Kent.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, thank you all for taking the time to listen to the community members. It's much appreciated. I want to make a quick point. I have a couple points I'd like to make. One is that Mr. Tarr seemed to really dwell on the fact that 140 Hodge Road was on the market for an extended period of time and had no buyers. The obvious implication is that there's insufficient demand for that property and that somehow this property is getting put to a higher or better use. I strongly disagree with that notion. I believe it's a gross mischaracterization of that property, the history of that property, and its existence on the market. The reason the bank came to own that property is precisely because those owners had a very large mortgage on that property and as such couldn't cut the price the same way other properties in the Hodge Road area, particularly Cleveland and other properties on Hodge, did cut their price. And in response, people came in, they bought the house, they poured millions of dollars, oftentimes, usually hundreds of thousands of dollars, and oftentimes millions of dollars. In fact, 150 Cleveland was such a house. The owner of that house plowed at least $2 million into that house renovating it. I can speak for myself. I'm not going to tell you the exact amount of money that I spent on my house, but I can tell you it was a lot of money. And I can tell you the sellers of our house did not have a large mortgage, so we were actually able to cut a deal. We certainly would have looked at 140 Hodge, but 140 Hodge had an inflexible seller. Why? Because they had a large debt load. So Mr. Tarr's characterization is grossly inaccurate. And it also sends the wrong message. People are willing to buy those homes. They're willing to restore those homes. They care about those homes. They're passionate about those homes. Why? Because it's a very, very unique block. What makes it unique is that it has this particular area where the lot sizes are very large, and there's a lot of green open space, and people come to it. In fact, you see tourists come, and they travel through Hodge Road. They say, I want to see Hodge Road. In fact, I've had a lot of people come to me and say, tell us about the history of your house. We want to hear about it. Why do they come there? Because it has a unique appeal to it. Why are people putting millions of dollars into it? Because it has unique appeal to it. Now, with all due respect to our builder here, he's never built a house such as what he's shown you. And it's very relevant. He's telling you he's going to change his whole building style, build a house. He's got a house on Russell Road that looks nothing like it. It has a faux stone facade. And I'm not trying to be insulting. You know, people like faux stone. But I can tell you, our block will never recover from this, ever. And the whole notion that someone might buy one of these homes and plow a couple $1 million into it because of the very unique nature of it, so that people will come and tour that block. And they say, you want to know what? I'm going to leave Princeton University and walk. They literally walk on foot down Library Place and up Hodge because it's that unique. That is over and that is done so he can have more money in his pocket. And that's all I have to say about that.
Wow. Next person.
If you could raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last
My name is Roy Lott. I live at 146 Hodge.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the name.
Roy Lott, L-O-T-T.
Okay, thank you.
I live at 146 Hodge, which is the lot identified as number 19 up there. In addition to just saying I agree with all the other people who are opposing the application, I want to point out a few things. Number one, as the board has pointed out, the failure to show the lots on the other side of Hodge Road is a gross misrepresentation. Secondly, the 3 lots there that are shown with smaller frontages, each of them, contrary to the photos that are shown, each of them have circular driveways with 2 entrances. So you're really not in those photos even seeing what the front of those buildings look like. And then finally, there was a comment made about the frontage of the lot, if it was allowed the application to be accepted, that they would maintain the vegetation. I think, perhaps unintentionally, that's a misrepresentation. They've already torn down most of the trees that were on that lot. There's right now just only a hedge. And here again, as may not be really relevant to the application, but as an annoyance, the fact that they are not maintaining the front of that lot, but are allowing the hedge to be grown, the sidewalk is covered with leaves, again, is not an evidence, to me at least, of being a good neighbor or good future neighbor. Thank you very much.
If you could raise your right hand.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes, I do.
So sworn or affirm.
And my name is Dorothy Plone, P as in Peter, L-O-H-N.
P-L-E, I'm sorry.
P as in Peter, L-O, H as in Harry, N as in Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. My husband Charles and I own the property at 100 Hodge Road and at 162 Library Place. We've enjoyed our life of 35, 36 years as property owners in the Western District. And I want to speak about the night of the fire and sort of the consequences which happened after. We were awakened by the alarm, and it was very hard to tell which building was on fire. But as I ran out into our backyard, which is in the lot of 100 Hodge Road, you could see how close the flames of the fire were to all of the trees. And I think by subdividing the land and making a sufficient surround of landscaping and trees that have protected and beautified the neighborhood would create such a dangerous situation that it would be unavoidable that more houses wouldn't have been destroyed. As that night when it was burning, there was the next door neighbors had 5 children in their home. And the house at 142, I just think was, the family was away on vacation. But just imagine if their house had caught on fire, if it would have been so close to the first house. If it hadn't been for the fire department spraying all of the trees with hose, those trees would have caught on fire. So that is one thing for the safety of the neighborhood and of these older homes with fireplaces, with all of the things that they have. I think subdivision is a very hazardous route to take. And then as a zoning board, for relationships in a community, I think it's very important for the design and the siding of homes to create a congenial atmosphere. We live at 162, and it's a narrow, non-conforming lot. So is 100 Hodge Road. But we are very close to both of our neighbors. It inhibits all 3 families. We can hear everybody's conversation when they're outside in the afternoon. It's very hard to access each other's property, for instance, for tree maintenance, for everything. We always have to have permission to go on or off each other's lots in order to take care of our properties. I think creating a situation that causes this type of existence is really a very unhealthy and does not create a good neighborhood for people. It just is always someone is in too close, something is just flooding, water runoff and everything will persist. And so I think for those 2 things, for safety and for the environment, and even as the big general thing, to maintain a harmonious neighborhood and a place for people to live and enjoy their homes. So those are my 3 comments, and thank you.
If you could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
So sworn or affirm. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
Okay, my first name is, full name is Hong Li, last name is L.I.
And your first name is? I'm sorry, again, how do you spell your first name?
First name is Hong, H-O-N-G.
Thank you.
I represent 141 Hodge. My client cannot be here. I'm the property manager for this house, for 141 Hodge. My client bought this house last year, and the reason they bought it that's because the Hodge, the street, the unique of the street, it's very culture and lots of trees and lots of big houses. So when we went to the house 141 the first time, it's very impressive. So the lot is 2.26 acres. The previous owner bought it in 2005, and he totally rebuilt the house. He spent lots of money on the house, and he did lots of stuff. So my client really like this house. And for the 141, it's just the cross street of 140. And And my client just let me say in this here to say if the new owner want to build the house better than 141, he will support them. So that's what he said. He said, for build one house, it's fine. It's better for the long term, and it's better for the house road. So that's what he wants me to say to here. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do think that's important. 141 Hodge is 2.26 acres. So there is variety, but the variety is not all to that side of the street where the lots are smaller.
And that house was a tear down. That was the Bunny Dilworth house. That was a historic house, and it was torn down to build that new house in 2005.
And is that on the other side?
Every house has mold. That's the old joke.
Wait.
One at a
Wait,
time.
wait.
Excuse me. Okay, I think I'm entitled to speak now.
Sure.
I
If you
may.
could raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I do.
So sworn or affirmed. If you could please state your full
Thank
name
you.
and spell your last name.
Yes, my name is Thomasina Shiro, and I'll spell both names because they're difficult. Tomasina, and the last name is Schiro. And I reside at 145 Hodge Road, which is the house that you referred to, Madam Chairman, earlier this evening, built by Shirley Morgan. The same, his family lived in that house, and we bought it from Diana Alcott, his daughter. And I really do object, and I really was offended that the entire Hodge Road was not shown on the lot. I appreciated your presentation, and I know why you were showing. You were trying to show the smaller lots. However, my side of the street are all double lots. They're over about 2 acres each. And my neighbor, who was represented by her management here, built the house, which was a tear down, but it was one house built to replace the one house that was torn down. It was not 2 houses built. And I will tell you that I don't blanketly just support anything that is new and different, because I was the person on my block who supported the people who built the house next door when many of my neighbors were opposed to them building such a large house. I'm by nature a libertarian. I believe you own something, you have the right to do with it as you please. However, I also believe in the rule of law, which is why I appreciate all of you up here this evening. When you buy a property and you know the regulations, you know the rules, that's what you should follow. Those houses on that part of the street are all large, beautiful homes. The people who built the house next door to me, Bunny Dilworth's house, built a home. They came to us to look at how our house was built. They used the same kind of brick. They built a similar house because they wanted to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. And I just beg you to please maintain the integrity of our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
If you could raise your right hand.
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm that testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
So sworn or affirmed. Please state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Deborah, Debora, Haynes, Haines. I live on 164 Hodge Road. I'm here in support of my neighbors in opposition to the proposed subdivision. And I just want to add to a comment that my neighbor, Barry Ehrlichman, made. There was a group of us that were very active in the historic preservation movement. Our group was against it because we felt as though the current zoning code and the laws that were applicable to our homes in Princeton would be upheld. That was the major reason why. And we remember testifying many times saying, please trust us. We love our neighborhood, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that our homes stay in the historic context that the houses were built. So what I want to say is the same way that we said that please trust us, I hope that we could trust you now to enforce the zoning code as we knew it to be, the 2006 code, which we relied on when we were in opposition to the historic overlay. And please keep that in mind because it's important, because we trust you to uphold that law, just the way we asked you to trust us that we would take care of our neighborhood the way that we do. Thank you.
I guess we'll have the attorneys put on their own case. Do both of you have witnesses?
Just mine. Madam Chair, I apologize for my ignorance. How late do you normally go before you stop new testimony?
11 o'clock.
Well, that won't happen. I'm sorry. What I mean is I can't finish by 11 o'clock. I don't mean that won't happen. I'm happy to start our planner, but I won't finish by 11 o'clock. But there are a couple of things that if I could, I'd like to put on as part of our case that are legal argument, and then perhaps preserve a half an hour to 40 minutes for our planner. Not tonight, I understand.
Mr. Barron, okay, we'll continue the hearing, assuming we get an extension. Where are we, Carrie?
We have room on the agenda for a November 8th meeting.
And when does the clock run?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that date?
November 8th?
So that would be another Thursday?
Yeah.
I'm in West Windsor that evening. I'm sorry, I can't be here. By the way, the law permits an objector to request an adjournment because of unavailability of both witnesses and himself. We did it once, but I'm previously committed in West Windsor, so there's nothing I can do about it.
You in West Windsor, Jerry?
Excuse me?
In West Windsor hearing?
It would be a zoning board meeting, I guess.
Yes,
Zoning-
it is.
Zoning
It
board.
is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Carrie, when does the clock run?
I'm sorry.
When does the clock run?
The clock expires tonight, so, actually tomorrow. So we would need an extension of time. If we can't be heard on the 8th, then we'll have to, there are other dates and there should be a 24th. Well, we do have a meeting already scheduled for October 24th, and our agenda may be adjusted, so we may have room to finish this.
Chris?
But we would still need an extension.
Does that work?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
We have a tentative opening on the 24th of October.
October 24th?
That's Thursday also. Does that,
I'm not sure, but if I can't be here, my partner will be here. I don't want to belabor this beyond reason, so one of us will be here on the 24th.
Okay.
Just a couple of comments I want to make.
I think we're still in housekeeping.
You okay?
talk to his people?
That works? Okay.
Okay. So,
And just we'll announce it now so we don't forget at the end that this is going to be carried to October 24. There won't be any further notice provided in addition to the announcement that's just been made.
all right, so all of you will have to let your neighbors know.
I guess he wants to.
Did you want to do a couple more things before 11 o'clock?
Yes, if you would permit, Madam Chair. I just want to bring to the attention of the board and its professionals several points because I believe they are critical points, and I didn't want to do this at the beginning of the next hearing because I may catch them unaware, and I don't think that's fair. So as to Mr. Cohen's point at the very beginning of the hearing, when I first got the file from my OPA request, the first thing I said was, where's the detail? Where are the houses going? What do the houses look like? Where are the driveways? What's the landscaping? I won't get into everything I asked, but that kind of an idea. And so I prepared a statement to give to the board in two respects. One, your minor subdivision ordinance requires, among other things, elevations and details for the proposed construction. Not front elevations, elevations. I assume that means you want to see the whole house. Oh, by the way, I apologize. This is section section 17A-161, minor subdivision checklist. And I just read from the subsection 11. Number 2, floor plans. Never got floor plans. There's a reason for floor plans. It's not just enough to show a pretty picture. You have to show how the house is intended to be constructed. And obviously, that's going to assist you in determining whether it's consistent with the other homes in the neighborhood, which, by the way, is their obligation to prove. And then the last one is documentation sufficient to demonstrate how the proposed improvement appears in context. That means a site plan. That means showing how it will appear in relationship to other homes in that area. You don't have any of those. Or let me say this, I don't want to besmirch anyone. When I made my Oprah request, I didn't get it. When I made my second Oprah request, I didn't get it. So either it doesn't exist, or, which is fine, if it doesn't exist, it doesn't, but then they haven't submitted a complete application, which means whether you deemed it complete or not, you can't really act on it. Now, going further than that, section NJSA 40:55D-10.3 has to do with applications. It says the following: the application shall not be deemed incomplete for lack of additional information or revisions are not required by the agency or not provided. However, the sentence before that says the following: the municipal agency may subsequently require information not specified in the ordinance or any revisions in the accompanying documents as are reasonably necessary to make an informed decision as to whether the requirements necessary for approval of the application for development have been met. I would respectfully submit to you, number one, it doesn't comply with your checklist for minor subdivision. Number two, I agree with Mr. Cohen and Ms. Wilson, and I think Mr. Quinn, although me saying I agree with you should mean nothing to you. That's nothing to be proud of, believe me. But I think in saying that you feel, it's kind of like a gut. You need to see more to make a judgment about this, because what you're looking at is just flat white paper with lines drawn on it. You get no feel for what this really will be. And I think that's the intent. I think that's the intent of your ordinance, that you would know that. So that buttresses it. So for those reasons, we would respectfully request before, and perhaps tonight, you could give some indication of what you would like to see, or direct your professionals to indicate what they would like to see in addition so that it could be submitted, recognizing that if we're going on October 24th, it would have to be submitted pretty quickly for everybody to be able to review it before the next meeting. Then finally, I'm going to pose a dilemma. I've been doing this for 43 years. Mr. and I have sat on boards together. Well, not on boards. We've been professionals on boards, not members of the board. And I've represented a lot of boards. I don't know where this came from, but I'm going to read a section of your ordinance, and I believe it precludes you from considering the subdivision. So let me read it to you. I'm going to break it into two pieces so you understand where I see the dilemma. This is a definition of lot, L-O-T, in your definition section of your ordinance. And that section is 17A. capital A -201. Now, I'm going to read it, and there is a part of it that's very relevant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to emphasize when I get to the part that's relevant. So you can all think about it. Mr. Mueller can think about it. We can all figure out, hopefully at some point, what it is. So here is the definition of lot in your ordinance. By the way, it's not consistent with the municipal land use law. But as Mr. Mueller knows, it doesn't have to be consistent with the municipal land use law. You are empowered to develop definitions of your own if you choose. So here in Princeton, a lot is a single tract of land under single ownership or control, located within a single block, which at the time of filing for a building permit is designed by the owner as a tract to be used, developed, or built upon by a unit, period. So there was a building permit issued for it before the fire. It was one building. It was designed to be a single tract. Such lot may or may not coincide with the deed description or the boundaries of the same as shown on a map recorded for record or otherwise. Here comes the interesting part. And it may be subsequently subdivided into 2 or more lots, provided that such lots conform to all the regulations of the district. This doesn't. They can't receive a minor subdivision. This does not conform to the standards of the district. We all know it's the lot width. It doesn't conform. Now, there's something more interesting that leads me to say, well, no, well, you can simply get a variance for that. The last part says, a lot may be occupied by more than one principal building, except in the R1, R2, R3, and R4 zoning districts. So they have precluded you from allowing more than one structure on this lot. That's why we do this. That's why lawyers do this. The fun of trying to figure out the puzzle, what it all means. And I just wanted it to be in front of you because I can assure you it'll have legal significance at some point in this. I appreciate all of your attention. I appreciate the attention that you've given to my clients. I appreciate the attention that you've given to the neighbors. I think you've asked, my few visits here to Princeton have always, since the Princeton Ridge attempted development, have always indicated that it's a highly informed and understanding, let's say, board. So we appreciate that. That's always good to have on an application. I'll be back, or my partner will be back. Do you know if we would be the first application or if we would be later?
We have something prior to that.
All right, we'll check with you so that, because maybe I can go to one and then jump over to the other meeting. I doubt it, but maybe I can try that. Thank you.
All right. We do need
Yeah, Chris has already indicated he will grant the extension. Okay. And it's going to be carried to October 24. Mr. Gazarovski, do you have anything you want to? I'm sorry?
That is satisfactory.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch it.
It's okay. Said it's okay.
All right, and I think we will adjourn for this evening, and
Can't hear you.
I said we're
I
back-
move to
we're
adjourn.
back to adjourn. It's 11 o'clock.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Huh?
She made a fundamental, and she doesn't we find this one. There's not the northern track. It's a different development. It's got a different route. So the parks districts,